£500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There you are, good afternoon. It's midday on Saturday, the 15th of February. Hope you had a wonderful Valentine's, by the way. This is the weekend on GB News.
This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. They don't want.
That's President Zelensky, who has just called for the creation of a European army as he tells America Ukraine will never accept deals made behind their back.
Yes, a real wake-up call from Volodymyr Zelensky here in Munich to European leaders. He also said, I urge you to act for your own sake, saying this is not about just Ukraine, that if Putin wins there, he will come for other European countries.
Meanwhile, that's as J.D. Vance derails the Munich Security Conference, denouncing the state of free speech in Britain. But do you think he's right?
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Interesting. And more migration lunacy. Reports of a Zimbabwean paedophile allowed to stay in the UK over fears he may face hostility if he returns home. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend, and it starts right here and now. So I hope you've already recovered from Valentine's Day. Did you have a good one out there? Get sacks of cards? No, me neither, but there you go. This show is all about you. It's nothing without you and your views. So remember that. So if you've got any moans about Valentine's Day, you can get in touch and let me know as well. It's very easy to get involved. Talk about whatever you want, basically. It's a Saturday afternoon, so let's just have a chat, shall we? Easy to get in touch. Just visit gbnews.com/your say and join in our conversation. OK, I've got a brilliant panel for you, and I'm hoping got stacks of Valentine's cards as well. I'm looking at them, thinking maybe not. It's political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Yeah, OK, thanks. And journalist and writer Claire Muldoon. Yay! Thank you very much for joining me. Don't look at me like that already, Matthew. It's going to be a long day. OK, but before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news headlines with the lovely Sam Francis.
Dawn, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon to you. Just after midday, the top story this hour, the Munich Security Conference continues today, with world leaders, including Olaf Scholz and Volodymyr Zelensky, discussing global security challenges there. Also in attendance, the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy. He is calling for European sanctions on people smuggling gangs and will co-host a migration roundtable with Italy. He also says he and US Vice President J.D. Vance agree that Ukraine must be part of any peace talks with Russia. That's as Sir Keir Starmer pushes for Kyiv to join NATO. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has backed Donald Trump's message to Europe, urging nations to, he says, man up and step up their support for Ukraine. In London, thousands are expected to march to the US Embassy today in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Well, it comes after the US president said he wanted to take over the territory and turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. A counter-protest by Stop the Hate will take place along the march route near Vauxhall Bridge. The Met Police say there will be a major security operation to keep the groups apart and minimise disruption. They've also imposed conditions under the Public Order Act, restricting routes and start and finish times. Pope Francis is still in hospital for bronchitis treatment, but the Vatican says he is stable and has a slight fever. The 88-year-old was admitted after struggling with breathing issues, but had continued public engagements until just yesterday. Doctors say his condition is fair and he has now begun drug therapy. His meetings, though, have been cancelled until at least Monday, and it's not clear how long he'll stay in hospital. Police are searching for a man after a woman was seriously injured at a pub near Sevenoaks in Kent. Emergency services were called to the Three Horseshoes on Friday evening, with witnesses claiming the woman was shot. The suspect, who is believed to know the victim, fled the scene and remains on the run. Kent police say efforts to find him and establish what took place are ongoing. And two men have been charged after a man was attacked outside the Turkish consulate in London while burning a Quran. Footage on social media shows the victim on the ground as a knife-wielding attacker kicks him. 50-year-old Hamid Koskun from Derby has been charged with a religiously aggravated public offence order, while Musa Kadri, who's 59, faces charges of actual bodily harm and possessing an offensive weapon. Koskun is due in court today, while Kadri has been bailed until Monday. The Attorney-General has rejected calls to review the 52-year-old sentence of Southport murderer Axel Ruder-Cabana, ruling there is no legal basis to increase it. The 18-year-old was jailed in January for murdering 3 young girls and attempting to kill 10 others in a brutal attack. Lord Herma Casey says Ruder-Cabana will likely never be released and that any further appeals would only put grieving families through unnecessary pain. While the government says the case marks a line in the sand, and ministers are now outlining next steps to prevent similar tragedies. Hamas has released 3 Israeli hostages today after days of uncertainty over the fragile ceasefire in Gaza. In return, Israel is set to release 369 Palestinian prisoners later today. Hamas had threatened to halt the releases, accusing Israel of ceasefire violations, while Israel warned it would resume attacks if hostages weren't freed by midday. That fragile truce, though, remains on edge as both sides trade blame. And an update from the sporting world. World number one Yannick Sinner has been handed a 3-month ban from tennis after settling a doping case with the World Anti-Doping Agency. The Australian Open champion tested positive for the banned substance clostrobol last year, but was found to have been inadvertently contaminated by his physiotherapist. Authorities had initially sought a ban of up to 2 years, but agreed to a reduced suspension after accepting that Sinner had no intent to cheat. He'll miss major tournaments in both the US and in Europe, but will be back on court in May for the Italian Open. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for another look at the top stories in around half an hour. Now, though, straight over to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam. Something's telling me Sam might have got slightly more Valentine's cards than I actually got, to be honest with you, but hey, not really surprised, are you? OK, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Big day for you. It's absolutely packed show, but we are in this together on this loved-up weekend. Now, the Munich Security Conference is... romantic, I know. The Munich Security Conference is continuing today. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has spoken this morning about his country's war with Russia.
This is not just madness. This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. They don't want.
And it comes as US Vice President J.D. Vance launched a scathing attack on Europe yesterday, accusing governments and leaders of abandoning the values that have held Europe together since the end of World War II. Let's have a listen to what he has to say.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Not here, it's not me. Meanwhile, Donald Trump stays at home to crack on with his promise to bring peace to the Ukraine. The president also commentated on when he might next meet with Starmer. Let's have a listen to him.
Asked for a meeting, and I agreed to the meeting. We're going to have a friendly meeting. Very good. We have a lot of good things going on. But he asked to come and see me, and I just accepted his asking. It was his request, not mine. But, you know, I've met him twice already. We get along very well. He's a very nice guy.
You really would want to be a fly on the wall, wouldn't you, there? OK, let's get the latest from Munich with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, lovely to see you this morning. Catherine, OK, bring us up to date what's going on there. There's lots and lots of stories coming out of this particular conference.
Yes, good afternoon, Dawn. It really feels like Munich is the centre of everything at the moment, following, of course, the 90-minute phone call from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin the other day. Then yesterday we had an extraordinary speech from the US Vice President J.D. Vance, and today an equally extraordinary speech from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Just quickly on J.D. Vance, they expected that he would talk about European defence, about Ukraine, about China perhaps. Instead, there was only a very glancing, brief reference to that, where he said that he thought they'd get a reasonable settlement. But that 19-minute speech was nearly entirely basically having a go at European leaders. First of all, say that they're cracking down on free speech. The biggest culprits, according to him, are the United Kingdom and Scotland in particular. And then he also criticised very heavily the number of migrants that Europe has let in to its shores since 2016, and drew a direct line between the suspected terrorist attack only 2 days ago, less than a mile from here. I was at the site yesterday when that failed asylum seeker crashed a car into a crowd. That speech was met with a very, very muted and quiet response. Safe to say it went down like a ton of bricks here. Fast forward to this morning, President Zelensky's speech, frequent applause and a standing ovation at the end. He issued really a very startling wake-up call to Europe, calling for an army of Europe and saying, I urge you to act for your own sake. He was making it very clear. He says it's not just about Ukraine. Don't think that a deal can be done and the threat of Putin goes away. He says that Russia needs war to hold power together. And he said if they're not fighting in Ukraine, that Russia will have, quote, a surplus of battle-hardened soldiers who know nothing but killing and looting. He suggested that Kyiv has intelligence that Russia is planning to send troops to Belarus this year. He also said yesterday they have intelligence that Russia is planning to invade a member of NATO next year.
Catherine, how is that going down? What's the reaction from people there to what Zelensky's had to say?
Well, I think it's no surprise, really, of course, what he is calling for. But I think the intelligence that he says he has is very worrying. I think Dutch intelligence have heard similar. And, you know, Europe has been able to rely on America for decades. Since the Second World War, effectively, we've been used to having the US as the sort of policeman of the world. And what's happened is it's allowed European leaders who really thought that the days of war in Europe were long over, not to really prioritize defense, not to spend anything like that 2% of GDP, which is supposed to be a minimum for NATO membership, and to get away with it. We've had this peace dividend. But Donald Trump did make clear back when he was president last time that this was really not good enough. As far as he can see, Europe has been freeloading on the back of America. He's now saying, pay up, you need to spend 5%. And now, I mean, lots of countries nowhere even near 2%. So this is very difficult. I think European leaders are sitting up, they are taking notice, but are they going to act, and can they act quickly enough? I think there's a lot of doubt about that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. That's Catherine Forster, political correspondent, live in Munich for us. Lots of strands coming out of that particular conference. Lots of people saying things that I don't think people were expecting them to say. OK, let's see what my panel make of this one. I have political commentator Matthew Stadlen and journalist and writer Claire Muldoon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining me today. Really appreciate your company. I'm going to need your help as well, because it was Valentine's Day yesterday. It was also the husband's birthday, so I'm a bit away with the fairies. I've been living off of Valentine's Day chocolates and things like that. So good to have a good, strong panel. Now, what do we make of what we hear coming out of Munich? This free speech is in retreat in the UK, warns Vance. Zelensky, you know, we need your help still.
If you spend a bit too much time on Twitter or X under the stewardship of Elon Musk, under the ownership of Elon Musk, then you'll think this was the best thing ever to happen to Britain, this speech. Personally, as a proud Brit, I'm not into foreign leaders roasting our country. I thought it was an embarrassment. I thought it embarrassed America. I thought it betrayed decades and decades of a close relationship, hundreds of years, you could argue, of a close relationship between us and the United States. I thought it was patronising. I thought the Vice President talked down to Europe. He talked down to us. The clip that we showed, or that you showed earlier, of Donald Trump talking with a forked tongue, on the one hand insisting that he gets on well with Starmer, on the other hand making it clear that it was Starmer who requested the meeting and that Starmer has to go and see him. Whether you're a Labour supporter, a Tory supporter, a Reform supporter, whoever you support in this country, listening to an American president talk down to our Prime Minister should, I think, send a shiver down your spine. The idea that somehow free speech has gone down the drain in this country is absolutely absurd. He referred to a case of someone who was praying near an abortion clinic. And he suggested that the fact that this person was punished for that under the law meant that we have a real issue with free speech. You can have whatever view you like on abortion, and I think in the overwhelming majority in this country, we support the laws as they stand and women's right to choose up to a certain point in the pregnancy. You don't intimidate or do something that might have the impact of intimidating a woman at such a vulnerable point in her life. And I think this particular individual claimed that he was praying for the aborted fetus of a previous partner of his. Well, if you want to do that praying, you don't have to do that praying outside an abortion clinic or near an abortion clinic when a woman is going through an extremely vulnerable point in her life. So I thought J.D. Vance's speech was disgraceful. The idea that he's more threatened or feels more threatened by the threat from within, as he describes it, in Europe than Russia or China is absolutely appalling.
OK, this is, Vance was referring to Adam Smith-Connor, who was arrested after he refused to leave a safe zone around an abortion clinic designed to protect, as we've said, vulnerable women going in. What did you make of it, Claire?
What about that point in particular?
About what he said in general.
Let's take the whole thing that Matthew started off by saying, that the swathes of people on X or Twitter would be open to J.D. Vance's speech and practically be in agreement with it. One, I don't think a lot of our viewers are on X or Twitter, but I think they would agree with it. I am on X, and I certainly didn't spend a lot of time on it yesterday or indeed today. I woke up to this speech this morning and read through it. I think he was right. He's cutting through all the rubbish. We do have an issue of free speech in this country. We are pilloried. We are a very divided country at the moment. Europe is divided as well. Swathes of Europe are. The US are divided. You only need to look at the percentages of people voting for Democrats and Republicans, and it's still incredibly close. In this country, although it was a landslide victory for the Labour Party, I think there's a lot of post-purchase dissidence going on. A lot of people are regretting what they've voted for. Sorry. Back to the case of the chap outside the abortion clinic in Scotland. J.D. Vance quite rightly referred to the fact that the Scottish Government, under the SNP, brought in this ludicrous bill, this very divisive bill, that allows you to rat on someone in your own family, in your own house, for a thought crime. Right? And it's extended by the fact that if anyone acts on that, if anyone actually says anything that people disagree with, therefore, I'd say that infringes their free speech of using it. Therefore, they could be investigated and reported to the local authority, to the police services, and they would be arrested. Case in point, it happened. Now, that stand away the side of the fact that I don't think abortion is healthcare. I don't think abortion helps society. Who is praying for the right of the unborn child in this? Because I believe it's a child that is being killed in abortion. It is a hugely emotive subject. I mean, you don't even need to strip it back to women's choice. It's their bodies. It's this, it's that. It takes two people to make a baby, a man and a female. Where is the men's right to this?
OK, and Matthew, just quickly, you want to bring you back in on this one?
I mean, we could have a proper debate about abortion if you want.
This is not about abortion,
right.
This is about the whole free speech issue in this country.
The idea that I, as a man, should be able to make a decision about my partner or wife's body at that stage of a pregnancy seems to me to be appalling.
You don't think you have a say in it?
No, I don't. And I don't under the law. That said, let me be clear about my own position within my own sphere on abortion. I would never suggest to someone that I was with that they had an abortion, because I wouldn't want to be a part of it. But I would respect my partner's right to decide, and also I would respect the law. And I don't think people should be influencing, I used the word intimidating earlier, I think maybe the word was influencing people outside an abortion clinic. And if you break the law in this country, then you pay the price. I just asked Claire on the wider issue of free speech. I heard your point about this SNP bill.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it ever became law. And it sounds to me, and I've heard vaguely about that before, that it was overreached by the SNP. I'm no fan of the SNP in Scotland. I'm not sure, by the way, it was a thought crime, because someone would obviously have had to say something. Well, but more widely on free speech, is there anything you feel you would like to say on this programme today that you are forbidden to say under the law?
No.
Right, so we haven't got a crisis of free speech then, have we?
Well, we do to a certain extent, Matthew, and I think extended into... Look at universities, right? Tertiary educational facilities should be a breeding ground for new thought, new policy, new ideas. Instead, we've got reports today that universities are saying, don't say the older generation, don't mention words of the golden years, don't mention this, don't mention that. That, to me, is an impingement on free speech. Yeah, and it's at a very base level, Dawn. We're talking about young kids coming out of school. They've worked really, really hard. You know what it's like to work really hard and achieve good academic grades, Matthew. To come into he's very clever, and then go into a great university and then be able to explore. They're not being able to... They're not envisaged and they're not emboldened, they're not empowered to
agree
grow.
with you.
Okay, you can't agree. You might be very clever, but you can't agree or disagree just yet because we have to go.
Can we come back to it?
We are coming back to this later on.
Come back to you. It's all about you.
Wish me luck shutting you up, to be honest with you. For all the best analysis and opinion, I love him really. All the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to the website, which is gbnews.com. Now, I am Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. More migration lunacy. Reports of a Zimbabwean paedophile allowed to stay in the UK over fears he may face hostility if he returns home. What about the kids over here, eh? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. You can get the kettle on. We'll see you very soon.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yes,
and I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
No.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What? Even what? Nelson, that's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying and someone thought, we'll take a quick strip
Well,
of hair.
maybe they just had. Maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar? Maybe they thought we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000,
No
15 grand.
Where's
for a
the
lock of
hair come from? What part of the body?
His
is the
head,
hair from?
Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
You would
All right,
let me have a little look.
You would bid
It's very
more.
curly. I think it's his. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
That's creepy.
I was
Really
seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee, not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the house.
Well, she's right. She's right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello and welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. I hope indeed you did put a nice kettle on and get a nice cuppa in front of you. I've got one here. I need it this morning. Now, a convicted, because this is going to annoy you, a convicted Zimbabwean paedophile has been allowed to remain in Britain after an immigration tribunal ruled he would face hostility if he deported to his home country. I'm sorry, a nation shrugs. The man, known only as RC, won his case after Judge Sarah Pinder accepted that deportation would breach his rights under Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights. You knew that was coming, didn't you? OK, well, let's find out more about this particular story. Joining me now is political commentator and migration expert Dr. Mike Jones. Mike, this is one of those stories that you go, no, make it stop. What about the rights of kids in this country that he, might victimise? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's completely nightmarish. He should be deported. He's a paedophile. He's a predator. He's a danger to British children. He's abused British hospitality. He should be kicked out. He should be sent back. But of course, as you say, this case was judged on the Human Rights Act. That's British law. It was introduced in 1998. It referred specifically to Article 3, which is what they call the principle of non-refoulement. That sounds, very fancy, quite complicated, but it's quite straightforward. You cannot deport someone, even an illegal immigrant, if they're at any danger whatsoever in their country of origin. And the burden of proof is set very low. It could be some hypothetical danger that they face, and it doesn't really matter if they're just your bog standard illegal immigrants or a foreign national offender. If there's even the slightest chance that they could be mistreated in some way, you can't send them back. And whether they've committed a crime here or not is irrelevant to that. It's a failure in the system. It's a feature, not a bug.
Mike, we keep getting these stories. I mean, I think it was the beginning of the week, Monday, it feels like a lifetime ago already. We were talking about someone that couldn't go back to, Albania, I think it was, because his lad didn't like chicken nuggets in Albania, could only cope with them here. It just doesn't, to most people here, it just does not make sense.
No, that specific judgment, I think, related to Article 8 of the ECHR. Obviously, ECHR is embedded in British law through the Human Rights Act. That needs to be made very clear. Article 8 says you have a right to private and family life. The judge concluded that his child had special needs and he was insensitive to certain foods, chicken nuggets being one example. His father was a criminal, and he got leave to remain in this country under false pretenses. But this is how the human rights operates. It prioritizes the needs of fraudsters, criminals and illegal immigrants over the rights and the needs of the British people. But that's how it's designed to function. And it's really funny because the first interview I did on migration was close to 2 years ago. It was with Richard Tice, and I did another interview a few hours later on GB News. But the points I was making back then are exactly the same as what I'm making now. The Human Rights Act is at the core of the illegal migration crisis. Deporting people is not impossible, but it's very, very difficult in most cases.
And it seems to be getting more difficult. Thank you very much. That's migration expert Dr. Mike Jones. Thank you very much, Mike, for joining us. Well, those are his views. Let's get the views of our panel. Claire, I just want to bang my head on the desk at the frustration of this. OK, the human rights. I don't like chicken nuggets in a particular country. It's like, what about the people here? This the paedophile we're talking about. What about the kids in this country who could become victims?
Exactly, OK? And under the framework of the EHCR, it's very difficult, I think, for us to try and understand from a lame perspective, a human perspective, because we're not lawyers. We don't tease out the legal facts. And often legal facts and legal judgments for us as laymen don't make sense, right? But in this case, I'm sorry, he's not been sent back to Zimbabwe because he is a white gay man. I think it's horrific. He has not we won't be safeguarding any children in this country by allowing him to remain, given the fact he is a convicted paedophile. One of the grossest, most disgusting things in this country, crimes in this country, and he's been convicted of it.
Matthew, our dad, what about the kids in this country? When are we going to start putting them before the likes of this, as you say, piece of filth?
So a few points very quickly. Human Rights Act is, as your guest said, British law. So that's law that we have decided upon, the Parliament has decided upon. There is obviously a question that is being debated widely at the moment about whether the Human Rights Act is being interpreted by some judges too widely.
Mm-hmm.
A second point is that the awkward thing about human rights, the reason they are called human rights, is that they don't just apply to all of us, to the good, roughly good amongst us, the fairly decent people. They apply to the worst of us. They even, guess what, apply to paedophiles. That's why they're called human rights. Now, the final quick point is paedophilia is not confined to immigration. If you look at the NSPCC website, which is there to defend and protect children, 500,000, and let me say that again, 500,000 children in this country suffer sexual abuse in a year. Paedophilia is a worldwide issue, and it is an issue that spans all communities, and there needs to be far, far, far more to be done, clearly, to protect the children in this country.
I agree, but by giving him leave to remain in this country are not protecting the kids in this country, of whom he has already violated.
And, but thank you very much. We're running out of time. We could talk about that one, but let me know your thoughts. I mean, this programme is all about you, and this story already, I can see, is getting lots of you very, very angry. gbnews.com/your say to have your say on that story and anything else you want to talk about. I'm Dawn Neaston. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. But first, it's news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom, 32 minutes past 12. We start in Munich, where the security conference is continuing today with world leaders, including Olaf Scholz and Volodymyr Zelensky, discussing global security challenges. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy is also there. He's calling for European sanctions on people smuggling gangs and is set to co-host a migration roundtable with Italy later. He also says he and US Vice President J.D. Vance agree that Ukraine must be part of any peace talks with Russia, and that's as Sir Keir Starmer is pushing for Kyiv to join the NATO alliance. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has backed Donald Trump's message to Europe, urging nations to man up and step up their support for Ukraine. Thousands of people are marching to the US Embassy today in London in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. It comes after the US president said he wanted to take over the territory and turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. A counter-protest by Stop the Hate will take place along the march route near Vauxhall Bridge 2. The Met Police say there will also be a major security operation to keep groups apart and minimise disruption. They've imposed conditions under the Public Order Act and restricted routes, assembly areas and the start and finish times. Pope Francis remains in hospital today for bronchitis treatment, but the Vatican says he is in a stable condition, albeit with a slight fever. The 88-year-old was admitted after struggling with breathing issues, but had continued public engagements until just yesterday. Doctors say his clinical condition is fair and he has now begun drug therapy in hospital. But his meetings have been cancelled as it's unclear how long he'll stay in hospital. And Hamas has released 3 Israeli hostages today, just days after uncertainty over the Gaza ceasefire. In return, Israel is set to release 369 prisoners later today. Hamas, though, had threatened to halt releases, accusing Israel of ceasefire violations, while Israel warned it would resume attacks if hostages weren't freed by midday today. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup from me at 1 o'clock. And now let's head straight back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Another cold weekend to come, a lot of cloud across the UK, which we've seen for quite some time now. And there'll be further outbreaks of rain and snow in places too. High pressure blocking the warm from the Atlantic at the moment, southerly to southeasterly winds moving in, bringing that cold air across the UK. Outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales for the afternoon. Generally cloudy for many parts. Could be a few glimmers of sunshine across northwest Scotland, and very little changes as we head through the day. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain, some hill snow, perhaps even freezing rain across some southern parts of the southern Pennines as temperatures barely rise above freezing. So for many, a cold afternoon to come. Into the evening time, an area to watch is across eastern and southeastern parts of England, particularly East Anglia into Lincolnshire. There could be some outbreaks of snow developing, a few centimetres, leading to a little disruption. Elsewhere, generally cloudy, further wintry showers across eastern parts of Scotland. A few clearer breaks across the Highlands and Islands, where again through the day we would have seen the best of the sunshine and temperatures on the chilly side to end the day. So some local disruption perhaps for a time across East Anglia into Lincolnshire, but any snow should largely start turning back to rain as it becomes lighter and patchier into the early hours. A few clear spells developing across southwest England. There were lots of places staying cloudy and drizzly and murky, some hill fog. Temperatures falling close to freezing. Under any clearer spells, a touch of frost is possible, something a little milder across some western fringes of the UK. But a grey start again tomorrow. Lots of cloud, some hill fog, some drizzle in places, some hill, particularly snow over the higher ground, and further wintry showers across Scotland too. Further rain moving in across Northern Ireland as we go through the day. Temperatures for many staying on the chilly side.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Needham. I think we actually should put some of the stuff we chat about in the break on a premium phone line or something or other.
X-rated.
X-rated, yeah, after the watershed time. Any case, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciating your company. Now, it does, yeah, we're going to talk about Gen Z, aren't we? Or Gen Z if you're American. It looks like Gen Z is rewriting the rules of romance, because some of us are still feeling slightly romantic here. A new study suggests that young Brits are turning their backs on casual sex and embracing more traditional views on love and marriage. So are one-night stands officially over? Have Gen Z killed the one-night stand off? Let's dive into the findings with a broadcaster and a psychotherapist, Lucy Beresford. Lucy, thank you very much for joining us. We're all loved up here. You sure you don't want a cake?
No, that's fine. You can have mine. Okay. That's my gift to you.
Thank you very much. We're all loved up here because some of us didn't get as many cards as other people. Just saying. But what's going on with this story, Lucy?
Well, it's very interesting research which came out from The Times and Dazed magazine, and they were trying to find out how are Gen Z doing their relationships, and what they thought was that actually they are coming across as more monogamous because they don't want a one-night stand. But other research, and the really fascinating thing is it's from Ashley Madison, and they are the married dating website people.
Yes.
They found that the highest cohort of sign-ups for them were single men under the age of 30. So that is Generation Z.
Yeah.
So I think what we're seeing is that Generation Z, in general, they're definitely rewriting the rule book, but what they want is to experiment more. It's not just that they want that monogamy model, that if you're not having one-night stands, the only alternative that other people might think is monogamy. Gen Z are saying, no, we want lots of other options. We want non-monogamy, we don't want to put labels on things, and we are prepared to experiment more. They're going to live to 110, let's face it. Gen Z...
Not that rate, they won't.
Well, you never know, because they'll be satisfied, they'll feel fulfilled, and they will have a happier life, arguably.
Are you saying you don't feel satisfied and fulfilled if you're married? Lucy Barrett said.
I think there are a lot of people for whom marriage is no longer working, and yet society says that's the only model available. And what we're discovering, actually, funnily enough, some more research from Ashley Madison showed that what people are having within marriages are conversations around disclosed non-monogamy. So that's the sense in which you're very open. It means that you're very open and transparent about the idea that you might want to bring someone else into your partnership.
That was called an open marriage back in the 70s.
Yes, I think that might be the old term, the more vulnerable term. But the key thing is it's about transparency and it's about disclosure. And that's what the Gen Zers are kind of bringing to the party. They're saying, we want to be as vulnerable as we've ever been, we want to be as open, and we want to make sure that relationships work, that we're valued and that we are fulfilled.
This is bonkers.
Yeah.
This is just bonkers.
Oh, see what you did this.
But you're not Gen Z, forgive me. I mean, you obviously look like Gen Z, but you're
I
not.
imagine myself back into those years, and I don't... Look, we live in a free country, thank goodness. People can live their lives as they want, so long as they don't harm other people and it's all consenting. But I think it would be a real struggle to be in a happy relationship if it's open, even if you have both agreed that it's open. My feeling would be that it's always one person who wants it to be more open than someone else.
But that's the key. That's the key, is ongoing communication. You could even get to the stage where we talk about couples contracts, where you actually talk about these things. The problem is, historically, people have been really bad about talking about relationships. They get together, they have sex, they think it's all perfect, they get married, and then happily ever after. That's the moment at which you actually should start having more communication with your partner. And what Gen Z is saying is, we're having those conversations before we get married. They're blazing the trail for more communication in relationships.
Communication, fantastic, but having sex with other people, I think, really eats away at the intimacy that you have with that one special person.
Claire, eating away at the intimacy.
I absolutely 100% what you've just said, behind 100% what you've just said.
Are you agreeing with one another?
I am agreeing with Matthew Stadlen.
It's my role. I'm the matchmaker. I am the matchmaker.
I've got 4 Gen Zers, right? And they are nothing like this research has shown. And that's because I think there's faith involved and there's respect. There's respect for themselves. And I think for people to come, these Gen Zers who are coming out and saying, I want transparency, I want that, it's almost as if they're laying their books out in a show, laying their wares out in a shop and saying, you can have that, you can have that, you can have that, only because I'm allowing you to. It's not even about consent. This is about them thinking what other people want from them. And I think that's real danger.
No, funnily enough, I think the exact opposite. I think the transparency is actually, which again, I think you're completely right. I think Gen Z are leading the charge on that. But what it means is, this is who I am and this is what I want. And if you're not able to provide that, if you're not able to meet my needs in that way for, let's say, consistent communication, respect, fidelity, if you don't share my values, that's fine, but I'm not going to be in a relationship with you. Because this is what, and I think they are teaching the older people who maybe got together and are now in relationships where they don't feel seen, where they don't feel heard or validated, that Gen Z are coming along and saying, I'm worth more than this. I am worthy of someone who loves and respects me, but I'm only going to get that if I set my boundaries.
But it's not even boundaries. This research was done by a dating app to try and get people to have affairs.
Oh, no,
Let's not forget about that.
But the other research was from the Times and Dazed magazine, and they haven't got a...
But it's all the way the question's framed. You know that, Lucy.
Oh, well...
But I do think that kids really have to see that physical attraction and sexual attraction is very important when you're meeting someone new. But that's only part of it. There are loads of virtues that have to grow to make a relationship work and hopefully marriage. And this actually saddens me. This, I mean, it's framed as they don't want one-night stands, but what it is I identify today with how I want, and if you like what you see, you can have it. And then if I don't actually like the way you operate, given my transparency, well, you can just do one.
OK, well, unfortunately, we're running out of time on that one. But if you see what you fancy, you go for it.
Well, how about the idea of forsaking all others, Dawn?
Round your cage. Back in your box, Matthew Stadler. Any case, we're running out of time. Thank you very much for that. Now, if you are in a search of some winter... Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you very much for coming. If you are in... You can go and get some winter sun now. Search of some winter sun. Here is a forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations. And who doesn't need it? It's been a long winter. Here it is for you.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy showers and thunderstorms affecting the Adriatic and Ionian Sea coastlines, and this could also bring a risk of snow to Croatia. This will be through Saturday and also into Sunday, where low pressure largely dominates. But as we head further west across the Mediterranean, it should be largely settled, bar a little bit of cloud and perhaps the risk of the odd shower across Portugal and northwestern Spain. But Madeira and Tenerife largely settled, and it remains largely settled into next week, with temperatures widely in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening, the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it's essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this, and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plea to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah, because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company on this loved up weekend, if you're still feeling loved up. I know it's yesterday, but we can drag it out, can't we? Now, it is time, talking of loved up, it's time to go through all the latest sports news with broadcaster Aidan McGee. Yay! Not wearing blue.
No, not wearing blue. Not today. I'm just running short of a few blue items in my wardrobe, but I will correct.
Wear blue for me.
I know. I just couldn't do it today. I couldn't fulfil that pledge. But don't worry, I'll be back to normal next week. I absolutely promise that. And you two heard it here as well. Yeah.
Well, we'll make it snappy. Talk about your sport then. Come on.
Look, I want to talk about Yannick Sinner, the world #1 men's tennis player. This is a huge story. This because we suspected he might face a ban for doping, and he has accepted a 3-month ban today. Now, last year, this is how it began. The International Tennis Integrity Agency accepted his explanation that he'd used a banned substance called clostebol. Now, clostebol, he said, it was being used to treat a cut on his hand with a spray, an over-the-counter spray which had been administered by his physio, one of his entourage. He's responsible. Any athlete in tennis is responsible for the actions of any of their entourage. That's the first thing to.
And everyone knows that, right?
Well, everyone knows that. Yeah, exactly. Now, clostebol happens to be a drug that you can take to boost muscle mass. So it's slightly coincidental there. So anyway, they decided not to suspend him last year. WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, said, well, this is not right. And they actually pushed not just for the case to be heard again, but for him to be banned for 2 years. This is the world #1 tennis player. This is somebody who's won the Australian Open twice, including just last month. And he knocked out our very own Jack Draper in the US Open on his way to winning it last September. So he's now accepted. We thought the hearing would take place in April. It's now been brought forward, and it looks as if someone's trying to brush us under the carpet. If I was going to be cynical about it, because in this 3-month spell, he's not going to miss any really major events.
And I'm astonished by how lenient it is.
Yes.
If you look at other sports, I'm struggling to think of an obvious comparable example.
Well, look, I think tennis has to be really careful here, because I agree with you. I don't think that the punishment handed down is anywhere near strong enough. If you're another player in the top 10 or top 20, or even somebody much further down who has their eye on maybe career earnings of £1 million or £2 million or whatever, they might think, well, if a 3-month suspension on some relatively minor tournaments outside, not Grand Slams, is the only punishment you're going to get, if it even gets there, if you get caught, then I think a lot of them will be far more willing to take the risk. Tennis wants to avoid a situation that athletics went down back in the 90s. The broadcasters, the advertisers, Dawn, could not guarantee the sanctity of those races, which is why the athletes in Britain who were not as successful medals-wise as our current generation, but they were much more famous, much more recognisable. I mean, how many of us around the table can name half a dozen Team GB athletes from the Olympics from last year? How many people in? I think we'd struggle. I think we'd struggle.
Probably if you push me on it, but I'm not going to.
No, exactly. But this is the point. This is the point. This is the point. The broadcasters and the advertisers, sponsors pulled out of athletics. We saw it later on with cycling. We've seen the ushering out of the ending of the Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray era. Djokovic is still around, of course, but the new group of players are not quite as charismatic as the ones that have just gone. If there's doping added to that as well, if they're not dealing with the cases strongly enough, I think you could see the tennis hit a downturn.
We watched those races, didn't we? Those meets at Crystal Palace and stuff, weren't they?
On a Friday night.
Broadcast.
On a Friday night. We knew who they were. They weren't even winning gold medals every time, but they were successful in their own right for different reasons, and they were celebrities. We knew who they were, but the broadcasters pulled away. We don't know them. They're not as recognisable anymore.
Why did this ban take so long to come in place? Why was the judgment so long? Because this all happened last year.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because in that time, he's since won the US Open in September and the Australian Open, as I mentioned, last month. So this is them arguing they've handled it quickly, because it was going to be in April, and now they've dealt with it in mid-February.
I don't think the optics good until...
It doesn't look good at all.
The optics, unfortunately, mean that I've run out of time. Sorry about that.
I'll be back in blue next week.
Not the optics with gin in them. That comes later. Thank you very much, Aidan. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back very soon. But first, let's get the weather with Greg, and hopefully it's going to be a bit warm. Is it? Greg, give us some good news. Here's the details.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front.
Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather forecast for GB News. Stays cloudy through the rest of the weekend for many, further outbreaks of rain and snow in places too, and cold for many of us. Just something a little milder across the far west. High pressure keeping the Atlantic warmth from moving in. Cold southeasterly breeze across the UK. And this weather front giving outbreaks of rain and snow in places too. A few centimetres possible across parts of East Anglia down into southeast England, perhaps Lincolnshire as well. But it should turn back to rain as we head into the early hours, and generally a cloudy night to come for many. Further patchy light rain in places, perhaps a little hill snow over the highest ground across the north and the west. Temperatures close to freezing for many, just something a little milder across the far southwest of England, with some brighter spells to start Sunday. These confined to the far south and north of the UK, so there could be some glimmers of sunshine across coastal stretches of the Highlands into the Western Isles as well, but the east cloudy with wintry showers. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, Northern England as well, with patchy rain, some hill fog, murky conditions, a chilly start for many. Some glimmers of sunshine for western parts of Wales down into the West Country, but even here there'll still be a lot of cloud around, damp towards the east and southeast, and there'll be little change as we go through Sunday. We're still drawing in east to southeasterly winds, keeping a lot of cloud across the UK, some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, some snow across the higher ground across the north as well, some patchy rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures still chilly for many, 4 to 6 degrees, just a little milder again towards the far west southwest, of highs around 9 to 11 Celsius possible here. As we go through the evening time, still a lot of cloud around. Any clear spells, temperatures will drop away, some icy stretches possible, some frost, and it stays very similar Monday and Tuesday. A lot of cloud around, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder by Wednesday.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Inside Number 9, Stage/Fright. So Inside Number 9, massive cult BBC 2 show. One half of the League of Gentlemen, so Steve Pemberton, Reece Shearsmith, they are the kind of creative geniuses behind all those sorts of shows. So it's weird, wonderful, macabre, sort of very, very black comedy. And this is their kind of farewell thank you to fans. It is such a niche show and such an extraordinary success already ticket-wise. It's virtually sold out. We're hoping it's going to actually extend. Stunning. So basically, it's 2 or 3 of their episodes mashed together. I haven't seen the show. Absolutely fine. So for me, it was actually just a revelation. Other friends have seen the shows and they were just ecstatically happy. The only new bit is an opening segment of about 10 minutes when the stage pulls back and we see seats facing up with a few people dotted around. It's the most fantastic play on terrible behaviour in theatre audiences. With one man getting increasingly annoyed and basically doing the things that we've possibly thought about but will never do, and all the misbehaviours meet gruesome ends. So don't try this at home. But, you know, certainly a couple of times you've been like, ah! The rest of the show, the first half is based on Bernie Clifton's dressing room. It's 2 old-time comedians reunited, very melancholy. Second half is a very gothic-y kind of Grand Guignol, sort of schlocky horror, eyeballs coming out of the face, paintings moving, and then there's a show within rehearsals. There's a ghost, brilliant riffs on everything that's been going on in the West End, handheld camera scenes, which they're mocking, and pop stars cranked into major theatre productions.
I'm liking some of the satire you're describing here.
It's so much fun.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, there you are. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Saturday, the 15th of February, and this is the weekend on GB News.
This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. Not. They don't want.
Just in case you haven't spotted it, that's President Zelensky, who has just called for the creation of a European army, as he tells America Ukraine will never accept deals made behind their back. And that's as US Vice President J.D. Vance derails the Munich Security Conference, denouncing the state of free speech in Britain. But do you think he's right on that one?
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Meanwhile, thousands of people are marching to the US Embassy today in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. We'll be there live covering that march. You can see your pictures there. And then university guidance warns that euphemisms like of a certain age or golden years are no longer acceptable to use when referring to old people. But what do you think about that one? I'm Dawn Neeson. You can call me whatever you want. I don't mind, by the way. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So thank you for joining me this Saturday afternoon after Valentine's Day. I hope you're all knee-deep in cards out there. No, me neither, but never mind. Because this show is nothing without you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on anything you want to talk about. Valentine's Day, did you have a good one? Did you have a bad one? How many cards did you get, etc.? Make me feel guilty. And any of the stories we're talking about. It's a Saturday afternoon. Let's just chill and have a chat, shall we? It's very, very simple to get involved. Just go to gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. Keeping me company today, and lots of you are already saying, yay. Kind of. It is political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Yay! Yay! Thank you. And journalist and writer Claire Muldoon. Double yay. Thank you very much. And we've all got Valentine's cakes here. And I've just eaten a half of mine, which is now stuck in my tooth. But before we get into the stories today, let's get the news headlines with a very professional and not at all eating Valentine's cakes, Sam Francis.
Dawn, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 1. The top story this lunchtime. Thousands of people have started their march to the US Embassy in London in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Let's take you live now to the scenes. We don't actually have those pictures, but we can give you an update on the situation there. People seen holding signs, chanting and cheering as they march from Whitehall to the US Embassy. It comes after the US president said he wanted to take over the territory and turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. The counter-protest by Stop the Hate will take place along the march route near Vauxhall Bridge. The Met Office, the Met Police rather, say there will be a major security operation to keep the groups apart and to minimise any disruption. They've imposed conditions too under the Public Order Act, restricting the routes, assembly areas and the start and finish times later. The Munich Security Conference is continuing today with world leaders including Olaf Scholz and Volodymyr Zelensky discussing global security challenges there. Also in attendance, the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy. He's calling for European sanctions on people smuggling gangs and will co-host a migration roundtable with Italy. He also says he and US Vice President J.D. Vance agree that Ukraine must be part of any peace talks with Russia. That's as Sir Keir Starmer is pushing for Kyiv to join NATO. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has backed Donald Trump's message to Europe. He's urged nations to man up and step up their support for Ukraine. Pope Francis remains in hospital today for bronchitis treatment, but the Vatican says he is in a stable condition with a slight fever. The 88-year-old was admitted after struggling with breathing issues, but had continued public engagements until yesterday. Doctors say his clinical condition is fair and he has begun hospital drug therapy. His meetings, though, have been cancelled until at least next week, as it's unclear how long he'll stay in hospital. Police are searching for a man after a woman was seriously injured at a pub in Kent. Emergency services were called to the Three Horseshoes in Sevenoaks on Friday evening, with witnesses claiming the woman was shot. The suspect, who is believed to know the victim, fled the scene and remains on the run. Kent police say efforts to find him and establish what happened are ongoing. Two men have been charged with after a man was attacked outside the Turkish consulate in London while burning a Quran. Footage on social media shows the victim on the ground as a knife-wielding attacker kicks him. 50-year-old Hamit Koskan from Derby has been charged with a religiously aggravated public order offence, while Musa Kadri, who's 59, faces charges of actual bodily harm and possessing an offensive weapon. Koskan is due in court today, while Kadri has been bailed until Monday. The Attorney-General has rejected calls to review the 52-year sentence of Southport murderer Axel Rudakabana, ruling there is no legal basis to increase it. The 18-year-old was jailed in January for murdering 3 young girls and attempting to kill 10 others in a brutal attack at a children's dance class. Lord Hermer KC says Rudakabana will likely never be released and that further appeals would only put grieving families through unnecessary pain. His sentence is the second longest in English history, legal history, that is. The government says the case marks a line in the sand as ministers outline next steps to prevent similar tragedies. That's the news on GB News. Plenty more still to come right here with Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam. And believe me, by the end of this show, I will get the number of Valentine's cards that young Sam received out of him. He's keeping it very quiet at the moment, but I will get it out of him. Don't worry, I can do that sort of thing. OK, now let's get straight on to today's story, shall we? Now, the Munich Security Conference is continuing today. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has spoken this morning about his country's war with Russia. Let's have a listen.
This is not just madness. This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. They don't want.
It comes as US Vice President J.D. Vance launched a scathing attack on Europe yesterday, accusing governments and leaders of abandoning the values that have held Europe together since the end of World War II, in particular singling out the UK. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within. The retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Wow, strong stuff. Meanwhile, Donald Trump stays home to crack on with his promise to bring peace to Ukraine. The president also commented on when he might next meet with Keir Starmer. Let's have to listen to what he had to say.
Asked for a meeting, and I agreed to the meeting. We're going to have a friendly meeting. Very good. We have a lot of good things going on. But he asked to come and see me, and I just accepted his asking. It was his request, not mine. But, you know, I've met him twice already. We get along very well. He's a very nice guy.
OK, well, OK, and let's see what my expert thinks of what we've just heard there. US political commentator Nelson Aspen. Nelson, so much to unpack. Let's actually start with our Donald Trump meeting Keir Starmer. At Keir Starmer's insistence, it was very clear to make it that this is what Keir Starmer wants, not what I want, almost. What do you make of it?
Well, I think at the end of the day, President Trump remains quite an Anglophile. He's besotted with your nation, and I think it's very important for him to keep those strengths, even in Trump world, where he proclaims America first. So I think it is very important to the president, and it will be a good meeting. Whether or not they have an ongoing relationship remains to be seen, especially after yesterday's speech by J.D. Vance.
Yes, well, it brings us very neatly onto that. What did you make of what he had to say?
J.D. Vance is very blunt. He's also very well-spoken. So I think the speech brought a lot of uncomfortable feelings to the audience, both the audience that was in the room and the audience online that has been listening to it ever since. He brings up uncomfortable truths, uncomfortable situations, so it does become subject to interpretation. Do you want to agree with him and think, oh, the quote-unquote woke political correctness culture has gotten out of control? Or do you want to say, hey, America, don't patronize us. We mind your own business. So it really is dependent on your own political views, Don.
He was meant to be speaking about defence in general, wasn't he? So to go down this particular route I think it took a lot of people there by surprise.
That's right. And he, like President Trump, thinks that Europe needs to step up in terms of their own defense. And I think given the Ukraine situation, that's going to be more vital than ever.
Do you think that Trump will be happy with what he's said in the way he said it? Bearing in mind Trump is, hoping to meet our Keir Starmer and said they have a good relationship. So do you think, because J.D. Vance was quite challenging to Europe, wasn't he? He wasn't actually saying, you're doing good things. It was really having a go at us.
That's true, but a lot of Europe's problems are also America's problems. And the speed and force with which Donald Trump is reshaping our government at the moment with the whole MAGA, Make America Great motto, does have an appeal to Europe as well. There will be, for sure, a mega movement to make Europe great again.
And the other part of this holy or unholy trinity, depending on your point of view, Elon Musk, he called Keir Starmer two-tier Keir on his social media platform. So where does that fit into all of this?
Well, it depends on whether or not you enjoy X or not. We are such a divided world, and it really is a case of which side of the playground are your pals skipping rope and on the jungle gym. So if you want to play on the left side of the playground, or do you want to play on the right side of the playground? And I mean right in terms of position, not in terms of correct.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's our US political commentator, Nelson Aspen. Thank you very much, Nelson. OK, well, let's see what my panel make of this one. I still have the lovely Matthew Stadlen and Claire Muldoon with me. Claire, I'm going to come to you first on this one. What do you make of, first of all, Vance saying free speech is in retreat in the UK, and then also Trump going, well, Keir Starmer has demanded a meeting with me?
Well, the fact that Starmer will meet with Trump is fact. They will. Regardless of how the invitation or the acceptance came about, he will, because they both actually need each other. And for Vance, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, to stand up at this very important summit, can we just say, because there's going to be a lot unpacked here. He had Vladimir Zelensky opposite him in a panel yesterday as well. He was speaking about, for me, I don't know why people are getting up in arms about that. He's not wrong. Free speech is in retreat, and he identified certain cases in Britain, and he actually extrapolated Britain in that case from the EU. And he was basically making a comment, making a fact, a very factual observation, in my view. And he was quite right to do it on that platform in Munich.
Why do you think free speech is in retreat?
Because I think we're so divisive, Dawn. We are really divisive in this country that you can't even go to a pub and chat about things in case you offend people. Friendship groups have been fractured. It's very disparate out there, and that's incredibly sad. Some would say it's because of free speech that people are being offended, but my view has always been and always will be to defend free speech. If you want to burn a Quran, you burn a Quran. If you want to burn a Bible, you burn a Bible. It's within your right, your democratic right to exercise your freedom of speech. I might not like it, I personally wouldn't do it, and I wish people wouldn't do it, but that's part and parcel of being able to do that in a democratic society, surely.
How can we be divided, Claire, and how can you know that we're divided if free speech isn't raging? Free speech is pretty much as free as it's ever been in my lifetime. I don't feel any less able to say anything now than I have in the 45 years of my life. One thing I will say on blasphemy, whether it's involving Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, whatever it is, I don't think we should have blasphemy laws in this country. We don't, and I don't want one to get in by the back door. At the same time, we have to make sure that we are not inciting hatred, inciting racial hatred, or inciting religious hatred. And there may be a tension there which is quite difficult, quite tricky to untangle, to disentangle. I was appalled by J.D. Vance's speech. I thought it was patronising. I thought it was embarrassing to America. I thought it let down decades, if not centuries, of close relationships. I think he's a lightweight, and I think he's in bed, not literally, but he's in government with Elon Musk, who's supposed to be this great free speech champion. The lines between the media and government in America, well, they don't exist anymore. They're not even blurred. They don't exist because Elon Musk is in government. And let's remember what this was going to be about, or supposed to be about. This was about Ukraine. This was about freedom in Europe. This was about safety on the European continent. And this was about the illegal invasion of a sovereign democratic country in the shape of Ukraine by Putin's Russia. Thousands upon thousands of Ukrainians have bled in that war, defending their country. You now have people in this country who claim to be proud Brits, proud of our nation state, as I am, but you have people on the right or the hard right say, oh, well, let's just give in to Putin, effectively. And that's what Trump has done. Trump is supposed to be the great deal maker. What has he done by speaking to Putin for 90 minutes? He's basically shown all his cards.
You don't think he should have spoken to him?
I'm not saying he shouldn't have spoken to him, but he's given all the concessions away. He's already said that he doesn't think Ukraine will be allowed to join NATO. He's already basically said that territory will need to be ceded. If you're Putin, sitting in the Kremlin, having invaded a sovereign country, having killed civilians and military personnel, the youth of Ukraine defending their country, if you're Putin, you will be delighted with what Trump has done so far.
You see, I think the Ukraine war was a war by proxy for Biden, and I think they bankrolled it. And as soon as the money started to dry up, Zelensky, you will find, was not happy with that. And Keir Starmer actually went to visit Zelensky and say, look, you can have 100 million. And everyone now is talking about our defence budget and GDP, etc., etc. We weren't before the election even discussing it. It wasn't even a thing. But we knew we were exposed, and we knew, we were told by all the leaders of the Army, the Navy, the RAF, everyone, you need to invest more in defence. And now what's happening? Even in today's Daily Mail, Boris Johnson has said the Ukrainians are there fighting the war alone. They've had millions of pounds from all of us. They need to start. There's a lot of it to be independent, and we need to stop looking at Ukraine as a buffer between Putin, Russia, and the UK.
This is not a
we shouldn't
war
have
by
got
proxy.
involved
It's
in it.
of course true that America has pumped in huge amounts of money for the defence of Ukraine, as have we, as have other European countries, and there are reasons for that. It's because a sovereign nation in Europe was invaded by Putin's Russia. And guess what? We think that is a bad thing. and it shouldn't happen.
Well, he did that with Crimea. For me, it is a proxy war. It's Biden's proxy war, and it's a land grab a la Crimea. And Putin, there's only one way Putin will be stopped, and I think it does lie with Trump.
OK, we have to move on. I just want to read one comment out from you, Grumpy Grandad. Hi, Grumpy. Vance's speech was spot on in every way, especially when he talked about Europe's leaders not listening to their people. It's a common issue right across the board. People are getting fed up with it now. Thank you very much. Keep those coming in. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story, just go to our website, which is gbnews.com. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. It's absolutely packed. We'll be going live to a pro-Palestine demonstration happening right now outside Parliament as they march down to the US Embassy. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. I'm sorry I'm giggling because I'm trying to eat a Valentine's cake in between talking to you.
You're still going
not a
with
good
the same
combination.
cake. Dawn.
We haven't even touched yours yet.
Oh, I'm waiting.
See, I
I
brought
need
you a
the
Valentine. I brought Matthew Stadden the Valentine's cake and Claire a Valentine's cake.
How many cards did you get?
One.
But that's all you should get.
In any case, we have to move on because this is going to annoy you. So we're not going to get loved up now. You're probably going to get angry. Thousands of people are marching to the US Embassy today in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Joining us now live from that protest is GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, thank you for joining us. Tell us exactly what's going on there and where you are.
Afternoon, Dawn. We got here a short while ago, and the protest here, organised by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, is now outside Westminster. It started at midday on Whitehall. It will then continue all the way to the US Embassy in Nine Elms, just south of the river. That will end at 4 p.m. The protest here, I should say, is under strict instructions to follow the agreed route with the Metropolitan Police. There's a strong police presence here. It will end at 4 o'clock, and those watching on television will see there are thousands of people here. Familiar signs, familiar sort of sights and sounds here. Free Palestine. There are lots of signs from the socialist worker group saying from the river to the sea, hands off Gaza, chants. There's a counter-protest across the river by Stop the Hate. The Metropolitan Police have made it clear that these groups, while they will be within sound and sight of each other, they are not to collide in any way. We are going to be here throughout the protest, following it to the US Embassy. As you said, the reason this protest is happening today, according to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, is because they oppose the US President Donald Trump's actions and words on Gaza, specifically as making it the Riviera of the Middle East, hence all the hands-off Gaza signs here. At the moment, I would say it's a familiar routine. We've seen these pretty much weekly since the 7th of October 2023. It's contained, it's not violent, it's very noisy at the moment, and we will bring you the latest as we follow it to the US Embassy in Nine Elms. So stay tuned, we'll be following it all the way along, Dawn.
Brilliant. Adam, before you go, I can't see much of a police presence there, so I'm assuming it's all very calm and peaceful at the moment.
Yeah, it's peaceful. It's loud and noisy, like I said. There's a stronger police presence to my left and to my right, basically. We're in between two sections where the Met have stationed themselves. They're also at the US Embassy as well, and they'll be there throughout the duration. This protest has to disperse by 4 o'clock under the order of the Metropolitan Police. So we will be there at 4 to make sure and to see that happens and to follow the latest actions of this protest.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Adam. Adam will be, as you've just heard, covering that march as it progresses to the US Embassy. OK, let's see what my panel make of this one. Yes, it's Matthew Stadlen still with me and Claire Muldoon still with me, enjoying our chocolate Valentine's Day cakes here. Claire, I mean, it's like another march. It feels like we've had one of these every week now. This one might have a slightly different reason.
Tone to it, yeah. And we've had already this week as well, in the courts in this country, a family from Palestine being able to use the Ukrainian access through to this country for either indefinite leave to remain or indeed for definite leave to remain. So I just wonder why the Palestinians in this country are so up in arms about perhaps another solution. Now, we can look at Trump and we can look what he said and we can actually agree or disagree or whatever. He wants to, I think it was another off-the-cuff comment, shooting from the hip, Trumpism. We will make Gaza a new tourist destination. That's incredibly flippant, of course. I mean, for me, Gaza is a treachery, it's an absolute awful disgrace of humanity in what's happened there on both sides, and also I think it's a burial ground for people who have died there. I think it's exceptionally rude of him to actually have said that. However, why come out and protest to the American embassy in this country? What effect, what change, what evolved change might there be, or are they hoping to get? Because I, for one, don't know what these people that are protesting about actually what they want. I don't know.
What do you think they want, Matthew?
What I think is that although what Trump said was appalling, absolutely appalling, and what has happened in Gaza is appalling, as of course was October the 7th, the idea that Donald Trump is going to be watching his TV screen, he might well be watching his TV screen, I think he watches a lot of TV, and will look at the streets of Westminster and think, oh, I tell you what, I'm going to change course, I'm going to change my strategy of dealing with Gaza and dealing with the Middle East because these people are protesting. Obviously not. That doesn't mean they don't have the right to protest, and if that's how they want to spend their Saturday afternoon, that's up to them.
But it is, again, Claire, it's bringing the centre of London to a grinding halt.
The policing cost.
Exactly that. We already know that's in the millions. And we've heard, these are live pictures you can see on your screen now, and we've already heard from many Jewish viewers and listeners who say they are scared to come into London when these marches are going on.
So there's and that's what I'm saying. I want to know why they're protesting. I want to know what their cause is, because this crosses a boundary of Gaza and what's happening between Israel and the Palestinians at the moment, and the terrorism of Hamas. It really does.
And we've got police officers to protect Jewish people. I'm Jewish myself, half Jewish. I don't feel scared to go into the centre of town.
Hang on,
I know, I was about to say,
but
if some Jewish people do feel scared, that's appalling, and that is what the police are there to defend them from. We have to be very, very careful to protect our right to protest in this country. It's one of our greatest and most dearly cherished rights. Whether we agree with them or not on any particular issue really is not the question.
It's fundamental to democracy, to a working democracy, that every voice is heard, whether or not we like the discourse, whether or not we like the narrative. But I, for one, want to know what that narrative is. I want to know what that discourse is. I'm not seeing any of it just now.
Well, some of it is deeply objectionable. The chant from the river to the sea I find extremely objectionable. Some people find it anti-Semitic. I think it's open to interpretation, and I think people have the right to say it.
When you say it's open to interpretation, what do you mean by that?
Well, some people think it's anti-Semitic and some people don't.
Right, OK. And how do you think it's not anti-Semitic? Because, I mean, to my mind, it means Israel ceases to exist.
And I understand that interpretation. I think the interpretation in a different direction is that people should have the right to return to houses and to properties that they were expelled from in the 1940s. That's a legitimate view. I think it's an impractical one, but it's a legitimate one.
Okay, I mean, Trump sort of was a bit vague about what he actually said in the end, wasn't he? It's sort of the Riviera effect. But also, if he does go in there and rebuild it, and then the people that have been displaced can go back and live there, that's a good thing?
Well, yes, it is a good thing, but it's only going to extrapolate and actually increase the amount of tension that was there in existence before what happened on the 7th of October, almost a year and a half ago. It really is. There's views, and there's humanity, and there's different existentialism going on here that people need to help get back on track with. You will never solve the conflict of the Middle East without people being up and open, sitting around a table and discussing it.
So it has been going on, well, since God was a boy, almost.
And also
literally.
We need to remember as well that any criticism against Israel is deemed anti-Semitic, always, which is very unfair and actually dampens down the discourse.
Some criticism of Israel is motivated by anti-Semitism. Some criticism of Israel is not motivated by anti-Semitism. One of the problems facing the region is that it has been tested to destruction, the idea that you can destroy Hamas. Look at the percentage of buildings in Gaza that have been destroyed. Look at the number of people that have been displaced since October the 7th, and still when these poor hostages have been released, are being released from the most extraordinary suffering, not knowing in some cases whether their family members are alive or dead, real physical and emotional, psychological torture. And who's flanking them? These people all masked up with their big guns. They haven't been destroyed yet. I have no idea what the way forward in this region is. I have no idea, but one thing is for sure, that Trump coming in there and talking about turning it into a real estate, which is one of the most emotionalised areas of land on the planet, is a disgraceful thing to do for the most powerful person in the world and the leader of the most powerful democracy.
But maybe he did backtrack and said, well, I'm going to rebuild it, so...
Well, the reality is, in that strip in Gaza, the Palestinians led a life of frugality, and they weren't allowed planning permission. The Israelis didn't allow them planning permission. The electricity was cut off. And, in fact, some people might say the demolition that's actually happened there and the rubble that's there actually was there before Israel started their strikes against the Palestinians and Hamas.
Claire, look at the buildings that have been destroyed where children lived. Women, children,
by Israelis.
Innocent men. Hang on, the strip. It wasn't exactly the living standards you would have in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem.
No, not at all.
It was a livable community. It was absolutely a place where human beings lived. and now look at it, is rubble. What Israel has done there, and I predicted it on the day of October the 7th, when that savagery took place, what has happened there is just beyond our comprehension.
Thank you. We will be following this march as it gets closer to the American embassy, so do stay with us. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. But first, let's get these news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you at 33 minutes past 1. As we were just hearing there, thousands of people have started their march to the US Embassy in London in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Live pictures there of the scene as people make their way towards the embassy from Whitehall, carrying flags, banners and chanting. It comes after the US president said he wanted to take over the territory and turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. A counter-protest by Stop the Hate is also taking place along the route of that march near Vauxhall Bridge. The Met Police say there will be a major security operation this afternoon to try and keep the groups apart and minimise disruption. They've also imposed conditions under the Public Order Act, restricting the routes, assembly areas and the finish time. The Munich Security Conference is continuing today, with world leaders including Olaf Scholz and Volodymyr Zelensky discussing global security challenges there. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy is also in attendance, and he's calling for European sanctions on people smuggling gangs and will co-host a migration roundtable with Italy. He also says he and US Vice President JD Vance agree that Ukraine must be part of any peace talks with Russia, as Sir Keir Starmer pushes for Kyiv to join NATO. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has backed Donald Trump's message to Europe, where he urged nations to man up and step up their support for Ukraine. Well, let's just bring you an update on breaking developments from Kent Police. We shared with you earlier that police officers there were searching for a man urgently after a woman was injured at a pub on Friday evening. Well, the latest line into us just in the last few minutes is that that woman in her 40s has now died after that shooting. Emergency services were called to the pub, the Horseshoes, on Friday evening. Witnesses claiming she was shot. As I say, we now know that she has indeed died following that incident. The suspect, believed to be known by the victim, fled the scene and remains on the run at this stage. Kent Police say their efforts to find him are increasing following the latest developments that this victim, 40-year-old woman, has passed away, and they are trying to establish what has taken place. We'll keep across that for you. Any more developments on the story of that ongoing police manhunt we'll bring straight to you. Meanwhile, the family of British nationals Craig and Lindsay Foreman is rallying to secure their safe return after the couple was detained in Iran. The pair, who were travelling across the world on motorbikes, were arrested in January, with Iranian state media reporting they face security charges. The Foreman's family described the situation as distressing and expressed their focus on ensuring their safety while working with authorities. The Foreign Office says it is in contact with Iranian officials and providing support. And world number one Yannick Sinner has been handed a 3-month ban from tennis after settling a doping case with the World Anti-Doping Agency. The Australian Open champion tested positive for the banned substance clostebol last year, but was found to have been inadvertently contaminated by his physiotherapist. Authorities had initially sought a ban of up to 2 years, but agreed to a reduced suspension after accepting that Sinner had no intent to cheat. He'll now miss major tournaments in both the US and in Europe, but will return in May for the Italian Open. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you in half an hour, and Dawn will be straight back with you.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Another cold weekend to come, a lot of cloud across the UK, which we've seen for quite some time now. And there'll be further outbreaks of rain and snow in places too. High pressure blocking the warmth from the Atlantic at the moment, southerly to southeasterly winds moving in bringing that cold air across the UK. Outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales for the afternoon. Generally cloudy for many parts. Could be a few glimmers of sunshine across northwest Scotland, and very little changes as we head through the day. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain, some hill snow, perhaps even freezing rain across some southern parts of the southern Pennines as temperatures barely rise above freezing. So for many, a cold afternoon to come. Into the evening time, an area to watch is across eastern and southeastern parts of England, particularly East Anglia into Lincolnshire. There could be some outbreaks of snow developing, a few centimetres, leading to a little disruption. Elsewhere, generally cloudy, further wintry showers across eastern parts of Scotland. A few clearer breaks across the Highlands and Islands, where again through the day we would have seen the best of the sunshine and temperatures on the chilly side to end the day. So some local disruption perhaps for a time across East Anglia into Lincolnshire, but any snow should largely start turning back to rain as it becomes lighter and patchier into the early hours. A few clear spells developing across southwest England. There were lots of places staying cloudy and drizzly and murky, some hill fog. Temperatures falling close to freezing. Under any clearer spells, a touch of frost is possible. Something a little milder across some western fringes of the UK. But a grey start again tomorrow. Lots of cloud, some hill fog, some drizzle in places, some hill, particularly snow over the higher ground, and further wintry showers across Scotland too. Further rain moving in across Northern Ireland as we go through the day. Temperatures for many staying on the chilly side.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. And now, horrible story for you. Officers are searching for a man after a woman in her 40s was shot dead at a pub in Knockholt on Friday evening. Emergency services were called to the Three Horseshoes pub in Knockholt, as I said, with witnesses claiming the woman was shot. The suspect, who is believed to have known the victim, fled the scene and remains on the run. Kent police say efforts to find him and establish what happened are ongoing. Awfully sad story on Valley. You can see live pictures there now. They're not live. But it's an awful story on Valentine's Day. I mean, Matthew, we know emotions run high at this time of year on Valentine's Day. I mean, we don't know the full ins and outs of what's gone on here, but it's just a horrible story.
Yeah, not much more you can say than it's just horrific. Absolutely horrific. Any day of the year, of course.
And there is something more poignant. I mean, we've had sort of like stories like this on Valentine's Day before, where people, lose their lives, and it's just incredibly sad. And thoughts with that lady's family, and we'll find out what actually happened. And as soon as we know anything, we will bring you more information on that. I mean, Claire, is there anything you'd like to...
Well, it's just the despair that people must feel at times, and that pushes them over the edge, really. And I think that's really, really sad. We must always have hope for the sake of having it and not fall into despair. As easy as it might be to say, to make these sounds of platitudes, to make, everyone saying, well, gosh, how on earth could that have happened? It's incredibly, incredibly sad. And even made more poignant at the time a life was taken away, when everyone else might have been celebrating the love of their life with Valentine's. But any day of the week.
Just more widely, very briefly, Dawn, I would say we know that we have an epidemic of violence against women and girls in this country.
We do, and the worrying thing, this involved a gun as well. I mean, it's like, you know, it seems to be
escalating.
The creeping rise of people using guns in this country. I mean, the knives, we're almost getting blasé about knives attacks now. But
knives, crossbows, and guns.
But you don't even need those weapons to abuse your partner. And of course, sometimes women abuse men. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but we've got a major problem in this country of violence, emotional, physical violence against women.
And do you think it's getting worse, Matthew?
It's difficult to say. I can't give you statistics from 20, 30, 40 years ago, but we are rightly starting to shine more of a spotlight on it, I think.
Claire, do you feel less safe as a woman in this country at the moment?
No, I don't actually, because when I go, I you know, it's safe routes, and you know, I feel safe at times at home, but. I think because I'm a woman of a certain generation, to use that term, but I think younger girls are far more vulnerable now than they have been, because it's very much, we know more about what can happen. We are, you know, awakened now to the troubles, the tribulations and the violence that is around more than anywhere else, because it is all on TikTok, it is on the news channels. We are more aware of it. So whether or not it's actually increased in terms of violence and likelihood, I don't know. But I feel safe in London. But again, it's managing your risk, right?
But Claire, it's also not just about safe routes, is it? Because there are no safe routes in your house, in your home.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think Sarah Everard was doing everything right when she was walking home.
Yeah.
And still, yes, you're bringing up to date on this breaking story. A murder investigation is underway after a woman was shot dead at a pub in Kent on Valentine's Day. Police were called to a reported disturbance at the Three Horseshoes pub in Knockholt near Sevenoaks just after 7 o'clock on Friday. A male suspect who is thought to be known to the victim fled the scene and is yet to be found. Officers did find a vehicle linked to the incident and a firearm at the Dartford crossing in Kent. So a horrible story. And we will be bringing you updates on that as and when we get them. Also on the march that is going on in London at the same time as well. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GBNews. There's loads more coming up on today's show. It is indeed packed, so you really don't want to go anywhere. But let's take a quick break.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. So it's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact-checkers. Fact-checkers in inverted commas, it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he's just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching interviews.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. It's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate, so that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company on this Saturday afternoon. Now, we have some live pictures coming in to us here from, this is the Palestine protest march. I'm not quite sure what they're protesting for. Seemed to be about what Donald Trump said about what's happening to the Gaza Strip. They are marching, as you can see there, through to the American embassy on the South Bank in London. There is a police presence there. So far, it has been quite peaceful, but we will be bringing you a live coverage of that march and obviously reporting on anything that you need to know that happens there. OK, so that's that one. As I said, stay with us. We will be covering that story throughout the show. Now, should we talk about being an old bag? Can I say that? Can I say that about myself? I just did, didn't I? Right, saying someone is of a certain age used to be a polite way to suggest they may not be in the first flush of youth. But lightly humorous euphemisms like over the hill or golden years are no longer acceptable when referring to older people. Old bag, obviously, is there. According to a university guide. Yeah, OK. Even describes someone as 80 years young is against the rules of inclusive writing guidance produced by the University of Bristol. Oh, make it stop. I would bang my head on the table if I didn't have a headache already. OK, let's see what my panel make it. I'm going to come to you first, Claire, on this one. As a woman of a certain
age. Oh, my goodness.
A woman of a certain age.
How did you do that?
Seamless. It's a seamless link. It's journalism.
Seamless.
You'll learn eventually.
If you hadn't said it, I would have. I said, why are you coming to me as a woman of a certain age?
Women of certain ages. I didn't call you an old bag, though, to be fair.
Oh, I've got enough of those. I've got two of those below my eyes already, Dawn.
Is this just like... It's words. I mean, it's really not...
It's patronising, and we actually discussed it at the top of your show when I brought this up, because I knew you were going to discuss it. And how dare universities infringe freedom of speech to police people in terms of what they can say and what they can't say. What did we have this week? A comedy event where one of the hecklers was taken out. Someone else was offended for another joke that Peter Kay had made. Yep. Channel 4 are now putting trigger warnings on Father Ted. Come on, make this madness stop.
We've got trigger warnings on kids' fairy stories.
Trigger was a character in
What's so ironic about this is that children clearly are accessing truly horrific stuff.
Yeah, quite.
Sexual content, violent content online. And so the idea that this policing is going on seems a little bit fringe to me. I have never quite understood what's going on in our universities. It wasn't like that when I was there, so I feel a bit out of touch with it. But my broad feeling is that universities should keep their hands off free speech.
Yes.
Even more broadly, as I said at the top of the programme, I don't feel any less able to say things freely now than I used to. On the issue of how we talk about older people, it's not as serious, obviously, as racism, because we're all, if we're lucky enough, going to become old. So, in a sense, we are all in that same boat together. However, would I want to be offensive to and insult someone who is older than me? Of course I wouldn't.
It's not, I mean, really, of a certain age, is that offensive? I mean...
But why are they drilling down? And I think this all started with cancel culture, of which I am certainly no fan of. And I think universities really have to take something out of something in their bodies and actually wake up, smell the coffee and let kids be kids. And I, for one, do not think that any of the children that I've come into contact with from nearly 30 years ago, and I know them still now, I don't think any single one of them would go out of their way to be offensive to old people, to anyone else that was different from their race or different from their faith or anything. These kids, and what
for me, actually cuts across it all is a sense of humour. And we're already starting to police that now. I think humour is the way to equip ourselves and actually get out of fights. If you diffuse an argument with a bit of humour, you've practically won.
Let's use an extreme example. You say we're starting to police humour. We've been policing humour for decades now. We don't have racism on racist jokes, racist comedy on primetime television anymore, and presumably you would agree with that.
Because that's evolution at its best, right? We evolve as a society, and in order to evolve, I hope it's positively. I can't stand the evolvedness. We've got Tilda Swinton in The Telegraph today. She's all over social media at the moment saying, we're evolving, we're doing this, we're doing that, or we're not evolving, we have to be nice. That's the problem.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, this is aimed at people of a certain generation, and I would include myself in that now. But it's like, you know, these are the generations that don't get offended by stuff like this. You know, these are the generations that have gone through so much stuff, as you say, the really bad stuff back in the day. And it's like, yeah, you know, call me
water off a duck's back.
Exactly. Call me all back. I don't care.
Well, first of all, you were not alive in the war, Dawn. So you were not part of that generation.
Not that old.
You're talking about been through very serious stuff, right? But secondly, I don't think we.
No, but we're talking about the older generation.
I don't think any one of us can speak for an entire cohort of people.
Right. OK. What?
Some of us take offence at things that others wouldn't, and so on.
But that's life.
I'm not saying it isn't.
Right,
I'm just saying that the whole generation doesn't take offence full stop.
Right, OK, you're not
what the University of Bristol actually are saying too, they're actually leading and planting seeds in young, fertile minds. You can't say certain things.
I'm going to.
And I think that's completely wrong.
Now, I'm going to be really offensive and tell you both to shut up. To be honest with you,
your show.
We're going to take a quick break, but first let's have a look at the weather. Here it is for you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather forecast for GB News. Stays cloudy through the rest of the weekend for many. Further outbreaks of rain and snow in places too, and cold for many of us. Just something a little milder across the far west. High pressure keeping the Atlantic warmth from moving in. Cold southeasterly breeze across the UK. And this weather front giving outbreaks of rain and snow in places too. A few centimetres possible across parts of East Anglia, down into southeast England, perhaps Lincolnshire as well. But it should turn back to rain as we head into the early hours, and generally a cloudy night to come for many. Further patchy light rain in places, perhaps a little hill snow over the highest ground across the north and the west. Temperatures close to freezing for many, just something a little milder across the far southwest of England, with some brighter spells to start Sunday. These confined to the far south and north of the UK, so there could be some glimmers of sunshine across coastal stretches of the Highlands into the Western Isles as well, but the east cloudy with wintry showers. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, Northern England as well, with patchy rain, some hill fog, murky conditions, a chilly start for many. Some glimmers of sunshine for western parts of Wales down into the West Country, but even here there'll still be a lot of cloud around, damp towards the east and southeast, and there'll be little change as we go through Sunday. We're still drawing in east to southeasterly winds, keeping a lot of cloud across the UK, some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, some snow across the high ground across the north as well, some patchy rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures still chilly for many, 4 to 6 degrees, just a little milder again towards the far west southwest, of highs around 9 to 11 Celsius possible here. As we go through the evening time, still a lot of cloud around. Any clear spells, temperatures will drop away, some icy stretches possible, some frost, and it stays very similar Monday and Tuesday. A lot of cloud around, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder by Wednesday.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For another chance to win, Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock on Saturday, the 15th of February. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. This is the weekend on GB News.
This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. Not. They don't want.
Just in case you hadn't realised, that's President Zelensky, who has just called for the creation of a European army, as he tells America Ukraine will never accept deals made behind their back.
I urge you to act for your own sake. The very bleak message from Zelensky to European leaders today in Munich. I'll bring you more details shortly.
That's as US Vice President J.D. Vance derails the Munich Security Conference, denouncing the state of free speech in Britain. What do you think, though? Do you think he's right?
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
And thousands of people are marching to the US Embassy today in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. We will be covering that live, and you can see live pictures on your screen now. I think that is of the counter-protest, which is also going on, which is for peace, I think. We're not 100% sure, but we'll be bringing you live coverage of that march as and when it happens. And JP Morgan CEO unleashes an attack on work-from-home Gen Z staff in new leaked audio. Do you agree with him, though?
And don't give me this work-from-home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday. There's not a goddamn person to get a hold of.
Ooh, strong words. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. Well, blimey, we do have an absolutely packed show for you, with a bit of love involved as well, because it is still Valentine's weekend, isn't it? But this show is, talking of love, my love for you for joining me, is all about you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today, or anything you want to have a chat about. It's a Love Duck weekend. Very simple to get involved at gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. Keep me company today. Yes, they are still with me. They haven't marched out yet. Political commentator Matthew Stadlen and a journalist and writer Claire Maldon, who are keeping me company in a very lovely way. Thank you very much. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Dawn, thank you very much. 2 minutes past 2, the top story. Well, thousands of people are now marching to the US Embassy in London in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Let's take you live to the scene there, where the people are making their way from Whitehall right through to the US Embassy, alongside a counter-protest by the group Stop the Hate. That is taking place along the march route near Vauxhall Bridge. The Met Police say there will be a major security operation to keep the groups apart and minimise disruption. They've also imposed conditions under the Public Order Act, restricting routes, assembly areas and the finish time later today. We'll be live on the scene for you throughout this afternoon. Meanwhile, the Munich Security Conference is continuing today, with world leaders including Olaf Scholz and Volodymyr Zelensky discussing global security challenges. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy is there too, calling for European sanctions on people smuggling gangs, and will co-host a migration roundtable with Italy. He also says he and US Vice President J.D. Vance agreed that Ukraine must be part of any peace talks with Russia. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has backed Donald Trump's message to Europe, where he said urging nations to man up and step up in their support for Ukraine. A woman in her 40s has died after a shooting at a village pub in Knockholt in Kent on Valentine's Day. Kent police say she was shot at around 7 o'clock last night and died at the scene. A murder investigation is now underway, with police confirming the suspect is a man known to the victim. Officers have also found a vehicle and a firearm on the Dartford crossing they say is linked to the incident. The family of British nationals Craig and Lindsay Foreman is rallying to secure their safe return after the couple was detained in Iran. The pair, who were travelling across the world on motorbikes, were arrested in January, with Iranian state media reporting they face security charges. The Foreman's family have described the situation as distressing and expressed their focus is on ensuring safety while working with authorities. While the Foreign Office says it is in contact with Iranian officials and is providing support. In other news, 2 men have been charged after a man was attacked outside the Turkish consulate in London while burning a Quran. Footage on social media shows the victim on the ground as a knife-wielding attacker kicks him. 50-year-old Hamit Koskun from Derby has been charged with a religiously aggravated public order offence, while Musa Kadri, who's 59, faces charges of actual bodily harm and possessing an offensive weapon. Koskun was in court today, while Kadri has been bailed until Monday. Pope Francis remains in hospital today for bronchitis treatment, but the Vatican says he is in a stable condition, albeit with a slight fever. The 88-year-old was admitted after struggling with breathing issues, but had continued public engagements until Friday. Doctors say his clinical condition is fair and he has begun hospital drug therapy, but his meetings have been cancelled until at least Monday. And world number 1 in tennis, Jannik Sinner, has been banned for 3 months from the sport after settling a doping case with the World Anti-Doping Agency. The Australian Open champion tested positive for the banned substance clostebol last year, but was found to have been inadvertently contaminated by his physiotherapist. Authorities had initially sought a ban of up to 2 years, but agreed to a reduced suspension after accepting Sinner had no intent to cheat. He will miss major tournaments in the US and in Europe, but can return to the Games in May. That's the news on GB News. Plenty more still to come, and now we can head back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam. Right, let's get straight into today's stories because we've only got an hour left together and it's a busy one. Thousands of people are marching to the US Embassy today in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Joining us now live from the protest is GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, bring us up to speed on what's happening where you are.
We are standing just ahead of Vauxhall Bridge. Behind me is the counter-protest from Stop the Hate. They are stationary here. Protest, the Palestine protest, which began on Whitehall, is now heading towards the US Embassy, is, as you can see, moving through this area now. They have been ordered by the police to continue marching. They're not allowed to stop. As you can see, it's very, very busy around here at the moment. We've seen 3 arrests so far, seen 3 people escorted away by the police. Insults hurled back and forth between the groups. And as you can see, lots of signs, lots of noise and commotion. We're going to follow this protest all the way to the US Embassy and we'll bring you the latest as we out the door.
Adam, can you bring us a bit more information about what the Stop the Hate counter-protest march is? I mean, I can see, obviously, the Israeli flag there. What are they wanting? What are they saying?
Well, we haven't spoken to them yet, Dawn, but when we do, we'll bring you the latest. We understand, of course, they are here. I mean, look, as every time a protest like this happens, and it has since the 7th of October, there's always a counter-demonstration like this, and they are, of course, angry at the protests here. And once we've spoken to them, we'll give you more information once we have it.
Adam, thank you very much. We're having a bit of trouble with your mic there. We will come back to you. And obviously, if you did see any offensive hand gestures during that footage there from Adam, not from Adam himself, obviously, we apologise, so apparently that. But we will be going back to Adam, bringing you up to date on that march as it's happening. Now, the Munich Security Conference is continuing today. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has spoken this morning about his country's war with Russia.
This is not just madness. This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. They don't want.
It comes as US Vice President J.D. Vance launched a scathing attack on Europe yesterday, accusing governments and leaders of abandoning the values that have held Europe together since the end of World War II. Let's have a listen.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump stays home to crack on with his promise to bring peace to Ukraine. The president also commented on when he might next meet with Keir Starmer. Let's have a listen.
Asked for a meeting, and I agreed to the meeting. We're going to have a friendly meeting. Very good. We have a lot of good things going on. But he asked to come and see me, and I just accepted his asking. It was his request, not mine. But, you know, I've met him twice already. We get along very well. He's a very nice guy.
OK, and let's get the latest from Munich with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, it's quite a dramatic conference so far. I mean, Zelensky's using quite strong words there, isn't he?
Yes, he really is indeed. And I think that the events of the last few days have really shaken European leaders here, beginning with the bombshell news that Donald Trump had a 1.5-hour conversation with Vladimir Putin. Some of it about Ukraine, of course. A supplementary call was made to Volodymyr Zelensky after that. Then they had the spectacle of the US Vice President talking for 20 minutes, barely mentioning Ukraine, barely mentioning security, and now a very, very stark warning indeed here from Zelensky. And he said to them, are your armies ready if Russia came for you? He's calling now for an army of Europe, and he's saying, I urge you to act for your own sake. He also says that Ukraine has intelligence that Russia is planning to send troops to Belarus this year. He also said yesterday that they have intelligence that Russia could be planning to invade a NATO country next year. Dutch intelligence, I understand, has heard similar. So real alarm here. Now, I interviewed Boris Johnson for GB News yesterday. I have to say he takes a much more positive view of all the noises coming out of the States than pretty much anybody else around here. He said that he thought Europeans were indulging in what he called a bit of headless chickenism. But the mood is really very alarmed here, because fundamentally they wonder whether the sort of international order that we've had since the Second World War, where we could depend on America when and if needed, is breaking down, and perhaps the United States may just not be there for us. Peter Hegseth, the US Defense Secretary, the other day made it very clear and said the US are no longer primarily focused on the security of Europe. So worrying words. Of course, Donald Trump many years ago told Europe that it wasn't spending enough on defence, told them to pay up. They are spending a lot more than they used to be, but now Trump is saying everyone needs to be spending 5% of GDP. I have to say there's no one in Europe spending anything like that. We're at about 2.3. So a really bleak message from Zelensky today.
Much. That's our political correspondent Catherine Fawcett live from Munich for us. Matthew, Zelensky's using very strong words here. Don't be arrogant. Involve me in the conversations you are having. You know, to the Americans having conversations with Russia. Involve me in this. Don't talk behind my back. And saying, you know, we need a European army. Do you think he's got a point?
I do think he's got a point, because I think, as Catherine was saying there, the world order, at least the Western order that's been roughly in place since the Second World War, looks like it is in the process of being shattered. And we can all just move on to the next headline if we want, but I think we would do well to listen to the noises coming out of America this week from three of their most senior politicians, including the president himself. What I don't quite understand is if this president thinks that we should be paying 5% on GDP, and again, as Catherine said, we're not paying anything like that.
2.8.
Yeah. Why is his vice president more concerned about people standing outside abortion clinics and being punished under the law for that in Britain than he is about the threats from Russia and China? If the threats from Russia and China are so great that we should be more than doubling what we're spending on defence, why is he more concerned, JD Vance, about what he describes as the threats from within?
I don't think that's the case. I think you're minimising it completely, Matthew. Minimising completely what JD Vance was doing. He wasn't talking about defence there. He was talking about the retreat, the real retreat of freedom of speech in this country and indeed in Europe. And we look at Je suis Charlie in the Charlie Hebdo thing in France. Look at the people's inability to stop saying things in case they cause offence. And I think going back to the Ukraine, I think Zelensky's running scared because it's within his MO for this war to continue. He can still get this money. Goodness knows what he's doing with it. I think the Ukraine war is a complete sham. I do think it's a Biden proxy war, and I think it's going to leave young Ukrainian men disenfranchised, and they're going to be armed up, and they're going to be the real threat, as well as people. I mean, Russia. Do we really think Putin? Putin's sitting at his desk. Putin is very averse to risk. We saw that during COVID, sitting either end when he was talking to Macron. These people are still heads of state. These people are still real and live.
Claire, this is outrageous. Zelensky is a man who was so brave that he stuck around in Kiev when Putin's forces were invading his country. So it's in his MO. If you seriously think that Zelensky wants the war to continue ad infinitum with his fellow countrymen and women bleeding, his own life no doubt under threat, that is
his own life.
Did you say that I'm confusing two things or minimising what Vance was saying?
Yes, I am.
Vance was precisely talking about defence. He was talking about threats, and he said explicitly that he is more concerned about what he described as a threat from within our societies than he is about Russia and China. And at the same week or the same time, His boss, the president, wants us to more than double our spending on defence.
He's underpinning that. Trump has come under that because he's underpinning his position with NATO, and he's saying that a lot of countries aren't stepping up to the mark financially in order to develop the shield that we all need to live in a safe environment.
Do you think we should spend 5% on defence?
I don't think we should. I'm not a defence expert. I think before this election, we should have been listening to defence experts, but no one wanted to bring that question into any of the political hustings, which I said at the time was wrong, because everyone could see this was going to car crash at some point.
But do you think Trump is right? Do you think Trump is right in calling for us to more than double what we're spending on defence?
It's not within my realm to say he's right or wrong.
You're a political commentator. I'm interested in your...
To devalue free speech. What difference does it make what Trump says? He has an ideal.
He's the President of America, and he's now essentially
so do you think he's so influential?
We can look after ourselves. He's enormously influential. He's the most powerful person on the planet.
So why is he not ripping up the post-World War II
order?
Why can't he use his influence then to say to other countries, look, you should be doing that or you should be doing this?
He can use whatever influence he wants. He's the President of America. I'm asking you whether you agree with how he's using his influence.
I do agree with how he's using his influence.
So you do think we should double our spending on defence to 5%?
I don't. We don't. We can't afford that as a country.
Or we don't agree.
I didn't say that. I agree wholeheartedly with Trump being able to say whatever he wants as the leader of the free world, Matthew.
And I'm asking you whether you think the substance of it is correct or not. And
I told you,
don't.
We can't spend 5% of our GDP because we can't afford it.
Are you therefore concerned that America appears to be withdrawing its support for Europe?
No.
Why are you not concerned about that when we have a rampaging Putin on our eastern front?
Because
America in retreat, putting America first, Europe left to defend itself, but when we're not spending anything like 5% on our defence...
So you think we should spend more on defence?
I think we may need to spend more, but let's be absolutely clear that if we double it, as Claire says, if we double it, think of the consequences of that. Think of the cuts that would have to come elsewhere, or the increases in taxation, or think about the growth that we would require. And at the moment, growth isn't going very well.
OK, we're running out of time on that one. The heated debate in the studio, but what do you think? GBNews.com/your say. Does Zelensky have a point? Does Trump have a point? Let me know what you're thinking on that one. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to our website, which is gbnews.com. However, if you do want a little bit of a light escapism, you could be one of our two brand new winners, each with a new iPhone, shopping voucher and £10,000. Well, in tax-free cash, it's all yours if you do this. Here's all you need to know.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. What could you do with that, eh? I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's absolutely packed show, and we're running out of time. But a massive UK gas field has been discovered. Yay! Oh, but don't expect it to be tapped any time soon. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, yes him, is sticking to Labour's promise to ban fracking for good. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News and Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down there boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over, but the idea of the shop-centred high street finished, that's gone, never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. Now, good news, a massive UK gas field has been discovered, but don't expect it to be tapped any time soon. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband is sticking to Labour's promise, that'll make a change, to ban fracking for good, despite claims it could secure energy and cut your bills. Is this a climate win or a costly mistake? Let's ask our next guest, who is pro-fracking campaigner, Lorraine Allenson. Lorraine, thank you very much for a pro-fracking campaigner. Go on, tell me how you become a pro-fracking campaigner.
Well, I live in the Vale of Pickering, which is actually a gas field, and that's how I got into shale gas, because the first well that got planning permission to be hydraulically fractured is in the Vale of Pickering. And we live with well sites, and we knew that they were well screened, you know, that you don't see much of them. And of course, I looked at the benefits, the economic benefits, and our need for gas that we're going to need for decades yet. So I thought, this is going to be wonderful for our area. It's in the north, obviously, in the North Yorkshire, and economically it would be brilliant for us and also the country. You know, since 2021, we've imported £105 billion worth of gas. And in 2001, we were self-sufficient for gas. So we need to be producing our own gas. And why would we not do that? Why would we import? Can anybody tell me the benefits of importing gas? You know, what is economically good about importing gas, environmentally good? You know, it's all negative to import gas. But Ed Miliband seems to be on a trajectory to ruin this country economically completely. And their answer to this is just to steal money off the elderly and take away their the payments for energy to help with their energy.
Yeah, the winter fuel allowance, indeed. I mean, Ed Miliband has placed a permanent ban on fracking just literally days after this new gas field was discovered. But there are concerns about the earthquakes and the fact that it's not a great thing to do for the environment. What's your answer to that?
Well, it can cause earth tremors, but there's a huge difference between tremors and earthquakes. Yeah. Construction and geothermal, quarrying, all these cause earth tremors. And if he's going to ban fracking, is he going to ban it from geothermal work, and offshore oil and gas? We do need this gas, and from under our feet, it would be far better. And as for the environment, we have very strict regulations here. And unfortunately, back in the day when there was all the anti-fracking movement, they were supported by organisations like Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, and Food and Water Watch, who were actually based in America, not in this country. And they obviously pumped a lot of effort and money into the campaign against us producing our own gas. And I found that very frustrating, because in our area, the average wage at the time was around 16,000 a year. And I wrote to such organisations to see how much their average salary was for their campaigners, and it was around £40,000 a year. There was a huge difference, and they didn't seem to care about the people here, the local community, how we could benefit. And what about the country generally? We're closing everything down in this country, manufacturing. Grangemouth is now closing. Ineos are going to close the refinery up there, the chemical plant. What are we going to do? What are we going to produce? Are we just going to keep stealing from grannies to fund this country?
It does make you wonder. Lorraine, thank you very much for joining us. That's pro-fracking campaigner Lorraine Allenson. Thank you very much. Matthew, we've got all these natural resources. Surely it makes sense to use them rather than importing, in many cases, from places like Russia.
You joked at the beginning of this segment about it making a change if Labour keeps to one of its commitments, but it was in the manifesto, wasn't it? Banning fracking for good. So you can understand why Ed Miliband is sticking to his guns on this.
But they haven't stuck to anything else in the manifesto, so why make a point of this one?
That's not true. That is not true. Now, this is actually quite a complex and difficult area.
We'll make it as simple as possible.
OK. I broadly support the government's commitment to green energy. I think that has to be the general way forward for the world. It is also true that for some time we are going to need gas as part of our energy consumption, I think. Tell me I'm wrong. And obviously, in an ideal world, we would be completely self-reliant. At the moment, we are quite reliant, heavily reliant, on Norway, as I understand it, and America. And it would be better, although those are non-hostile powers, even with Trump in power, it would be better if we could be totally self-reliant. But I think Miliband is probably just about right on this.
OK. Claire?
Well, no, I disagree. I think that they're wrong. And whilst I don't know the intrinsic ways that fracking actually affects the earth. I don't understand completely how on earth we would extract the gas, but it seems to me that this gas has come up in Gainsborough, wherever it is, and it is there as a natural resource. Why can't we tap into it? Moreover, I think broadly, Miliband is actually quite dangerous, and this whole net zero rush to the targets in 2050 is crippling an already endangered economy in this country, and it's crippling financially every single one of us that live here. And he has gone back on things that were in the manifesto.
Oh, yes.
For instance, the winter fuel allowance, the increase in taxes. OK, it's not personal increase in taxes for national insurance contributions, it's the employer ones, but we're already seeing with SMEs in this country, it's costing them so much.
The fuel allowance wasn't in the manifesto to protect that,
but they should have been protecting old people and protecting the elderly. And also,
we could debate the accuracy.
The third runway at Heathrow as well.
Oh, God.
He's now keeping quiet about that after Rachel Reeves saying she wanted to go ahead with it.
OK, we could debate the accuracy of manifestos for the rest of the day, but we're not going to. Now, thousands of people are marching to the US Embassy today in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. Joining us now, live from the protest, is GBNews reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, it was very noisy when we last spoke to you. What's happening now?
A little bit quieter now, Dawn. We've moved across the bridge and we're now in front of the US Embassy. You'll see, for those watching on television, the protesters are still making their way through Nine Elms towards the embassy itself. The protest has to be dispersed by 4 o'clock. That's upon the order of the Metropolitan Police, who have a very strong presence throughout the protest, which started on Whitehall at midday, and as I say, will end here at the US Embassy at 4 o'clock. On the other side of Vauxhall Bridge, where we spoke to you last, there was a counter-protest from Stop the Hate. We saw at least 3 people being escorted away by police. There was no violence. There's a lot of back and forth insults, but nothing you wouldn't necessarily expect. We've seen these protests before. We understand what it's like, and it's familiar scenes really to anyone who's seen this in the past. The protests are being staggered by the police, as I say, so it's a little bit quieter, although you can see a large group now arriving. This was the group, I believe, which surrounded us and headed over the bridge earlier when we were talking to you with the Stop the Hate protesters. So we'll bring you all the latest. As I say, they're going to end up here at 4 o'clock. The rain is starting to come in. The weather has taken a turn, so I do wonder if this will disperse things slightly earlier, slightly prematurely. But as I say, we'll be with you with all the latest, Dawn.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. And as he's just said, he will bring you live updates on that march throughout the day. That's Adam Cherry there reporting on the Palestine march. Now, there is plenty more coming up on today's show. It's absolutely packed. But before I tell you what we've got coming up for you, Nana Akua has joined us in the studio, and Nana always has a cracking show for you. I'm pretty sure today's going to be even better.
Well, let's hope so. Listen, we're going to stay with Adam Cherry with regard to the pro-Palestine protest. People not happy with Donald Trump saying, look, we'll build up this thing, we'll make it the Riviera of the Middle East. And then people weren't sure they'd be able to come back or not. But then it's interesting because they weren't happy with Gaza and they wanted another land. And now that one, potentially, you might not be able to go back to. They're also not happy with that. So it'll be interesting where we go. Hopefully all the hostages will be released as been promised. And then we'll look at David Lammy, our wonderful Foreign Secretary, talking to people of Europe, telling them to smash the gangs. Although I haven't seen much of that here yet from our own government. And I'm going to have a chat about Rachel Reeves as well in my niggle. Is it time for her to go? I mean, there's the all inconsistencies on her CV, and now this latest stuff about some odd expenses that everyone is hushing up. So we'll be looking at that as well. So lots to discuss on the programme.
Indeed, brilliant. That's Nana coming up at 3 o'clock for you, so you really don't want to miss it. It's always a cracker. Now, remember, let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say and join in the conversation. And I will promise to read as many out as I possibly can, but there is loads more coming up on today's show. Junior doctors battle for better pay. NHS trusts are splashing out on, high-salaried diversity roles, some earning twice as much as those frontline medics. What do you make of that one? All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and we'll see you very soon.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Another cold weekend to come, a lot of cloud across the UK, which we've seen for quite some time now. And there'll be further outbreaks of rain and snow in places too. High pressure blocking the warm from the Atlantic at the moment, southerly to southeasterly winds moving in, bringing that cold air across the UK. Outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales for the afternoon. Generally cloudy for many parts. Could be a few glimmers of sunshine across northwest Scotland, and very little changes as we head through the day. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain, some hill snow, perhaps even freezing rain across some southern parts of the southern Pennines as temperatures barely rise above freezing. So for many, a cold afternoon to come. Into the evening time, an area to watch is across eastern and southeastern parts of England, particularly East Anglia into Lincolnshire. There could be some outbreaks of snow developing, a few centimetres, leading to a little disruption. Elsewhere, generally cloudy, further wintry showers across eastern parts of Scotland. A few clearer breaks across the Highlands and Islands, where again through the day we would have seen the best of the sunshine and temperatures on the chilly side to end the day. So some local disruption perhaps for a time across East Anglia into Lincolnshire, but any snow should largely start turning back to rain as it becomes lighter and patchier into the early hours. A few clear spells developing across southwest England. There were lots of places staying cloudy and drizzly and murky, some hill fog. Temperatures falling close to freezing. Under any clearer spells, a touch of frost is possible, something a little milder across some western fringes of the UK. But a grey start again tomorrow. Lots of cloud, some hill fog, some drizzle in places, some hill, particularly snow over the higher ground, and further wintry showers across Scotland too. Further rain moving in across Northern Ireland as we go through the day. Temperatures for many staying on the chilly side.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello and welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. I hope you're having a lovely, kind of loved up Valentine's weekend still, isn't it? And we are eating chocolate Valentine's cakes in the studio. And Matthew Stadlen, one of my panellists, has just said, oh, have I got any chocolate smeared around my face? You know, like a child would. And do you think I'd tell him? Do you think I'd tell him if he had?
I'm not saying another word for the whole programme now.
Be careful what you say. In any case, thank you very much. Now, this is a story that's going to really, really annoy you. Junior doctors battle for better pay. We know that. Meanwhile, NHS trusts are splashing out on high-salaried diversity roles, some earning twice as much as the frontline medics themselves, with millions spent on equality, diversity and inclusion. Yeah, Donald Trump's favourite. Jobs and training. Is this really the best use of NHS funds, though? I mean, how anyone says yes to this question, Claire, is another matter, but we'll get to you later.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how on earth can anyone in the NHS substantiate salaries like this going to people that can say that because of X, Y and Z, you can get a job over someone else of A, B, C, for instance, because of the way that you are, because of where you're from, because of your race, your creed, your religion. How on earth can that be normalised in this world? It is completely and utter nonsense for me.
Is that what it's about, though? I'm not
What's
sure
it about then, Matthew?
I'm not sure I totally understand these roles.
Please do patronise us and tell us what it's all about if it's not about that.
No, I'm asking the question. I'm not convinced I know what it's about. I'm not sure it's about giving jobs to people with certain ethnicities. What we know is that you are 2 to 4 times more likely, I don't know what the statistic is now, to die in childbirth if you are black than if you are white in this country. And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that at all.
So what the NHS
so give the money to the nurses to stop women dying.
Well, there are lots of nurses already, and women, and midwives and doctors, and women are still dying. So we want to equalise outcomes as best we can. We want to make the NHS serve everybody equally. I'm not saying, by the way, that there is institutionalised racism in the NHS, but there are clearly...
sounds like that.
No, there are clearly issues that need to be understood. Now, Wes Streeting, he's not interested in sort of ideologies or job titles. He's no nonsense, as I understand it, as a health secretary. He wants to get better outcomes for people, but he's not going to get tied down in ideologies and perhaps, you know, DEI,
surely the best
schemes.
outcomes for people are the most intelligent and the best people for the jobs.
I agree.
Regardless of the race, creed,
I'm not convinced that the NHS
or sex.
These roles are trying to achieve different outcomes. If they are trying to achieve different outcomes, then I'd be against it. Of course, we have to have the best possible doctors, the best possible nurses. It is also important that we mustn't have racism, and again, I'm not saying that there's institutionalised racism, but an awareness of different cultures and awareness of the diversity of our population within such a massive employer in this country is probably important.
Well, I think actually it's quite dangerous, because look at north of the border, look at Fife Health regulation at the moment, Health Local Authority. They have you read about the Sandy Peggy case, which is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That's where DEI gets you in this country. It doesn't, it forbids, it's safety against someone else's safety. It's setting people up against people. It doesn't have a positive outcome at all for anybody, and it actually diminishes the roles of biological sex in this case, which is dangerous.
Claire, it's quite an assertion to say that these particular schemes, and as I say, I'm not expert in them by any means, and it's perfectly possible that they can lead to undesired outcomes, but it's quite an assertion to say there is no good that comes from them at all. I don't see where your evidence is coming from.
My evidence is the fact it's costing. My evidence is the fact it's costing twice the amount of money to employ someone to work in DEI than it is to employ a junior doctor. I would far rather have 2 junior doctors and no one extrapolating the facts of DEI within the NHS.
On the face of it, that is persuasive, and on the face of it, I would agree with you. But if DEI were to lead, and I don't know whether it does, because as I say, I'm not an expert in it, if it were to lead to better outcomes for patients in this country, then I obviously wouldn't be against it.
We shouldn't need DEI as a measurement for better outcomes. We should be having better outcomes for everybody that walks into the NHS.
We get there. We all want better outcomes. The question is how we get there.
Get rid of DEI for a start, because it's costing too much money. It's taking a valued resource in terms of pounds, shillings and pence away from the NHS budget, and let's put that into training people, not in how to approach people or deal with people. You present either
how
A&E
we approach people is important. Hang on, how we approach people is important, because we want to have an equality of outcome for all patients.
That's called life.
Country.
That's called keeping life.
You may say that.
That's the equality.
We're all human beings, and we can all get better. All I've said to you is that if DEI has a positive impact on patient outcomes, I would support it. If it has a negative impact overall, I would not support it.
Let's just put some figures into this one. Junior doctors who can have 10 years medical experience or more earn a basic salary between £36,616 and £70,000. Meanwhile, there's a slew of EDI jobs being offered here, including one in, where is this one? Covering the southwest of England, a pro-rata salary of £122,000
But Dawn, you'd be against strikes, wouldn't you? I think I've probably sat on panels with you, on programmes
No,
with
I
you,
support the right strike.
where you've opposed junior doctor strikes or you've opposed nurses' strikes. And here we are.
I support the right to strike.
Here we are focusing on DEI, which overall is a tiny, tiny drop in the ocean of NHS funding.
So why don't we use it to pay for the people on the front line?
Exactly, that's what I said. That's exactly what I've said. We shouldn't be removing a resource as fundamental as cash to put into something of DEI, which you can't even prove. I don't think any of us sitting round here can actually prove if it works. I'll tell you what does work. Feet on the ground, a lovely, sitting, comforting person to talk to, and someone that is legitimate in their training, and someone who can treat every single person for the best outcome, and the best outcome is survival. Surely.
The NHS is what is it, the third, fourth, fifth biggest employer in the world? So clearly it needs management. It can't just have doctors and nurses. There needs to be a degree of management, and this is one example of a management job. And I come back to the point. If it does good, I would support it. If it does bad, I would oppose it.
In any case, the NHS is also spending your money, remember it's your money, on teaching staff on British slavery.
For heaven's sake.
I'd rather they were taught to save my life. Thank you very much. Any case,
which they are, by the way.
After hubris comes nemesis, and that's all I'm going to say there.
Not that one, isn't? No. Any case, if you're in... Well, if you want to cheer yourself up and get some winter sun, here's the forecast of where you should be heading, the top European holiday destinations. Take it away.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy showers and thunderstorms affecting the Adriatic and Ionian Sea coastlines, and this could also bring a risk of snow to Croatia. This will be through Saturday and also into Sunday, where low pressure largely dominates. But as we head further west across the Mediterranean, it should be largely settled, bar a little bit of cloud and perhaps the risk of the odd shower across Portugal and northwestern Spain. But Madeira and Tenerife largely settled, and it remains largely settled into next week, with temperatures widely in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns, then we had soaring energy costs, then we had a hike in national insurance for employers, then we had soaring wage costs, and now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers, and if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs, you know. Remember, they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin, and the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company. And now, it's a nice heartwarming story for you. Veterans in South Yorkshire gathered at a new breakfast club which aims to bring former members of the armed forces together. The launch is ahead of the 80th anniversary of VE Day in May. Our reporter Anna Riley was at the event and has this story for us.
Tim came in by aeroplane, dropped by his parachute.
That was it?
Yeah, that were our job. 4 drums of avgas. Straight through centre bar tent. 2 cans of beer were ruined, but with a lovely sergeant, he ripped them all off.
Sharing memories of serving in the forces. Veterans met over breakfast to reminisce at Deangate Care Home in Barnsley.
There's no veteran clubs really for care homes in the area, or even really for the elderly population in this area. So I was like, right, okay, let's start one. So we started the veteran brunch. This is our first one today. And it's been so lovely because I think it'll help with their mental health, because I do notice sometimes that they don't like to talk about their experiences. They keep it kind of closed up, and obviously we all know what that can do to anybody. So hopefully going forward, this will help them open up a little bit
make new friends and just basically get out into the big wide world, but having a safe space to do so.
For the veterans here, it's vital that we all mark the upcoming 80th anniversary of VE Day.
My parents, grandparents all served in the First and Second World War, and it's bringing back what they did for us and the freedom we've got today. And we had the freedom of speech then, where we haven't now.
We hope it will not be forgotten. We hope it will be brought back to life what happened, what didn't happen, and what should have happened.
If we'd lost the war and Germany had taken over, what would we be speaking? We could be speaking German. But for those that laid down their life and the men that fought, they stopped that. And that's why all these gentlemen here are veterans who've done the same thing.
It means everything, doesn't it? Literally, that's where I was stationed. And I was in the Land Army.
It's your Christmas. You'll go enjoy yourself.
When farmers went to war, we replaced them and did all that work.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
The gathering wasn't just about recollecting the past, but also embracing the present. Former RAF serviceman Maurice Churchhouse celebrated his 95th birthday, and for him and the other veterans, the event was the icing on the cake. Anna Riley, GB News.
Isn't that lovely? An amazing generation. We'll never see their like again, will we, Matthew?
No, we will not.
No.
Well, maybe we will if Putin gets his way.
Right, OK. You have to lower that. Just say something nice. Say something nice about the veterans, how lovely and heartwarming and all that was.
It is heartwarming.
Right.
My own grandfather won the Military Cross for bravery in the Second World War.
And you actually said you're fed up with being called left-wing and all the horrible names you get called.
I get called a sort of far leftist, Marxist, whatever on social media when I would say, about as proud an Englishman as you could find in this country.
Would you like to comment, Claire Mulligan?
Can they not coexist in the same Venn diagram then, Matthew?
That's a very good question. I don't think they think I'm proud, though, of being an Englishman, when in fact I am.
Exactly. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That was a lovely thing. And, OK, how many Valentine's cards did you actually get?
Naught.
Naught? None?
None.
Not even the Litlands?
No one.
Oh.
Actually, my 2-year-old did do a really cool Valentine's card, but it went to my wife.
Oh. You'd have sent him one, wouldn't you, Claire?
Matthew?
Yeah.
No.
No, me neither.
I don't have his address.
No.
And it'd be unfaithful to do that. It wouldn't be the right thing to do.
No.
Do you know what? Apparently, there was, in shops, there is, like, Valentine's cards you could have got for your work husband or your work wife.
That's a bit
I
odd,
think
isn't it?
that's appalling.
Well, we all know Dawn will be sending them to the newsreaders, won't you? You will be. Anyway, can I just very quick question?
Go.
Quick question.
Go.
Well, we're going out tonight to celebrate Valentine's Day, but presumably because it is half price. Why do not more people not understand this? Why would you go and pay double
Matthew
on
Stadler.
Valentine's Day?
Thank you, Matthew Stadler, and thank you, Claire Muldoon. You have been brilliant, and thank you lot out there for joining me. Really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. There's loads more coming up on GB News today, especially at the next 3 o'clock hour with a fiery debate with the lovely Nana Aquia. And at 6 o'clock is a Saturday 5. But before I leave you, I'm back tomorrow. Here's the weather. Fingers crossed it gets warmer, eh? See you.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather forecast for GB News. Stays cloudy through the rest of the weekend for many, further outbreaks of rain and snow in places too, and cold for many of us. Just something a little milder across the far west. High pressure keeping the Atlantic warmth from moving in. Cold southeasterly breeze across the UK. And this weather front giving outbreaks of rain and snow in places too. A few centimetres possible across parts of East Anglia down into southeast England, perhaps Lincolnshire as well. But it should turn back to rain as we head into the early hours, and generally a cloudy night to come for many. Further patchy light rain in places, perhaps a little hill snow over the highest ground across the north and the west. Temperatures close to freezing for many, just something a little milder across the far southwest of England, with some brighter spells to start Sunday. These confined to the far south and north of the UK, so there could be some glimmers of sunshine across coastal stretches of the Highlands into the Western Isles as well, but the east cloudy with wintry showers. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, Northern England as well, with patchy rain, some hill fog, murky conditions, a chilly start for many. Some glimmers of sunshine for western parts of Wales down into the West Country, but even here there'll still be a lot of cloud around, damp towards the east and southeast, and there'll be little change as we go through Sunday. We're still drawing in east to southeasterly winds, keeping a lot of cloud across the UK, some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, some snow across the high ground across the north as well, some patchy rain across parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures still chilly for many, 4 to 6 degrees, just a little milder again towards the far west southwest, of highs around 9 to 11 Celsius possible here. As we go through the evening time, still a lot of cloud around. Any clear spells, temperatures will drop away, some icy stretches possible, some frost, and it stays very similar Monday and Tuesday. A lot